Junior International Board. Ready? The September 9th meeting of the Corvallis School Board will come to order at 6:34 p.m. The first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Will everyone who's willing and able please join us for the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the United States of America.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening and welcome to our community members who are joining us on our YouTube stream. Just for your information, the materials for this meeting can be accessed either through a link in the video description or through the Corvallis School Board website. So if you'd like to view those documents while we discuss them, you're welcome to see them. Directors White Bear, Baker, Adams, Tomini, Al-Abdraba, and Jones are joining us remotely this evening. Because of connectivity issues, their cameras may be off at times during the meeting, but they are here and attending. Our first item on our agenda this evening is board member reports. Does anybody have anything they would like to report this evening? No? Seeing none, we will move on then to the superintendent's report.
Sammy just raised his hand.
Oh, Sammy just raised his hand. Thank you. So Sammy, go ahead.
Thank you. So I will be brief. I just want to say I took a tiny part in supporting Director Vince Adams' role in observing OCA negotiation toward the end of the process. And as usual, I noticed that the negotiation was amicable and both parties put the interest of students and classified staff front and center. It's exciting to see this tentative agreement come forward for the school board's approval during this meeting. And I want to thank Director Adams for this role and the staff as being the board liaison observing the negotiation with both associations, and also the staff for their work. Really grateful for the work of the board on and the district on making sure our staff are well paid and well treated. Also, I may have reported this back in earlier, but wanted to reiterate how grateful I am for the Public Schools Foundation and for the federal and state funding supporting the expansion of offering summer programs to all students. It was a delight to visit a few classrooms and the Welcome Center along with Vice Chair Sarah Finger McDonald and Public School Foundation Board of Trustees. One thing in particular that caught my attention and excitement and gratitude is the sign in front of one of the classrooms or several of the classrooms with the following phrase written on it: graduating class of 2032. The sign puts things in perspective. First, I felt much older after reading that sign. Second, the summer programs and all the investments that we make in the children are a long-term and positive investment in the future. I want to thank the foundation and our state and federal partners for helping us achieve that vision. So that's my report.
Thank you. So let's move on then to the superintendent's report.
All right, well, thanks everybody. I wanted to start last meeting, if you'll remember, we introduced new principals to you. And so tonight we're also introducing new members of our leadership team to you. So we have a few members who are with us. So go ahead and turn on your cameras. That would be great. I'm going to start with Kim Nelson. I'll give her just a second to turn on her camera. There she is. So Kim is the executive assistant to the superintendent and board secretary. And so somebody that you'll be working alongside for years to come. She has been working in similar positions for around 15 years. And in our district, she's been at 3 of our schools. She's been at Sheldon, at Franklin, and most recently at Crescent Valley. And so she brings that experience from being in a school day to day and how that relates to the work that happens district wide. So it's exciting to have Kim join our team. Kim, anything you would like to add?
I'm just very excited to be here. Thank you.
We're glad to have you.
We are glad to have you. All right, and next is Lee Santee. Hi, Lee. So Lee has been in the Corvallis School District since 2001, and has most recently served as the principal at Garfield School. And one of the things that I know about Lee is her focus on data and how teams lead together by looking at data and making decisions for students. Something I've been able to observe multiple years over time. And so having her come into a position that is really focused on data literacy and enriching what our schools know about students through data is really valuable. She's working really closely alongside Lori Corvallis. So there's a team that's working together and really helping us to better understand where our kids are at, both in terms of our academics, our academic skills, but also the perception and those other qualitative measures, looking at things like youth truth and those conversations we've had over time, where the boards really wanted to delve in further. We have somebody to help us do that alongside Lori now. So we're excited to have Lee in this position. Lee, anything you want to add?
I just wanted to say I am so excited to be here in this capacity. Those of you that know me, I'm so excited about data. So, some people would hear that I got this job and they said, "Oh, really?" And I said, no, I wanted this job. So I'm really excited to be doing this work with the district.
Thanks again, Lee. Next is Sean Bernard. Sean is coming from the furthest distance to join our team, coming from Anchorage, Alaska, where he has served as the secondary coordinator for special education, secondary special education director, I should say. So Sean comes with a wealth of experience from a large district where he's supported students with IEPs and students in special education, about as many students as we have in our district. So he comes with a wealth of experience and also someone who has also played a role at the state level in Alaska, being the lead special ed administrator director at the state level in Alaska. So he is someone who brings a wealth of experience, someone also who brings positivity and laughter and passion to his work. So he has definitely been able to add a special piece to our district office. So we're really excited to have Sean on our team. And I anticipate many others coming from Anchorage following Sean in the future.
That's kind of our hope. Yeah, absolutely. And I have been graciously accepted by the district and the staff, and that speaks volumes to me, as well as the fact of the first few days, seeing the awesome things that are in place and the work that's being done. I frequently, just in my mind, I'm comparing it to my last district, and there are so many things that Corvallis is on top of farther than what our district was. And that is just, it's inspiring to be a part of that team and to keep that ball moving.
Thanks again, Sean. And so next we have Tara Sanders, and she is joining us from not very far away, just kind of across the highway there from OSU. So we're excited to have her join our team as well. Her last position was at OSU as Assistant Director of Nutrition and Sustainability, University Housing and Dining Services. So a big role there, and coming in following Sharon. We're excited to have her joining our team, somebody who's been connected to our community for a number of years, and somebody who has really just been hoping that this position opens up. And that's not the first time I heard it. Sarah mentioned that just a while ago, but that was part of that interview. So somebody who's really excited to be in that position and take on the work, and also recognizing the work we've done as a community around the foods that we serve our students and the work we've been doing around sustainability. So I think it's going to just be a tremendous match. And we've been so lucky to have her alongside Sharon the last couple of days as we're opening kitchens and feeding students, and we're doing that outdoors with brown bags and all those things that happen to start the school year off well were happening, and it was great to have an extra set of hands and mind to make it work. So thanks again and welcome to our team. Anything you'd like to share?
Thank you. Just really echoing a lot of the others' responses. So excited to be a part of this team and feel so welcomed, and just really feeling thrilled to be a part of such a capable and just well composed team already. That's like, such a big part of the initial kind of foundation is already set. And so, yeah, I just can't wait to observe more and take in more, and then just really start to make those incremental positive changes. And so, yeah, really thrilled. Thanks for bringing me on.
Absolutely. And finally, our newest member to our team is Kelly Losey. So some of you know Kelly from her work at the county. Over the last year, she's been in charge of communications in the midst of COVID with the health department. So she's someone who is as exhausted as we all are and ready to take on new roles and responsibilities. So that's saying a lot. So we're excited to have her join our team. I've known Kelly really because of her prevention work that she's done for youth. So our mental health convenings we do a couple times a year. Kelly's been an integral part of that. And so having that background and those connections will further support the work we do around the overall health and wellness of our kids, both academically and emotionally, and our nutrition services and all those pieces, are all falling together in such a phenomenal way. So great group of people to join our team. Kelly, anything you'd like to add?
Just to say hi, everyone, and hi again to those of you I've met before. And I'm really excited and looking forward to this work. As Ryan said, you wouldn't imagine I'd be hungry for more challenges, but I am. And the district is doing phenomenal work, and I'm really excited to get to be a part of it. So thank you so much for having me.
All right, thank you, all of you. And recognizing that this is the first week of school and everybody is running at a high rate, we're going to go ahead and excuse you and say thanks for joining us tonight. And when we're back together, we'll do those invitations and greetings person to person. But for now, thanks for joining us and joining our team. All right, I have a couple of other updates I wanted to share. One of them is around Corvallis Online, just so you have a sense of how that program is going this year. So we have 85 students in K-5 that have enrolled in Corvallis Online, and we have 80 who are in our 6th through 12th grades. So we have about 165 students that are currently participating in Corvallis Online for the school year. Again, this is the second year of the program. We've done curriculum adoptions now. It's a standalone school. And so we were excited to have so many families decide to participate in Corvallis Online. And also one of the things about it is that we've been able to add staffing there to make it a more robust program this year. So it will be fun to watch that continue to develop as the year progresses. And then as we move through the school year to make decisions about the following school year. So as of now, I think it's a viable, important program for us to have, and something that I would anticipate continuing for some time. So wanted to provide you with that update. Also, just a little bit of some of the highlights from that first 2 days of school. Some of you I know have kiddos, students in the schools who have been back for a couple days. We have 2 schools still to open on Monday, but as a whole, it's been exciting to see our students in person. It's been exciting to see how, when our students come back, how that impacts in a positive way our staff. It just really kind of makes us whole in a lot of ways, I would say. And so it's just been really an exciting thing to see, being able to open new schools. So the first morning I started my day at Lincoln, and one of the students came in and said, "This is the coolest school I've ever seen." And the list of descriptions went on and on from there. And then with another group of students, I said, "Hey, did you know that there's a gym?" a separate space from the cafeteria where we were standing. No, I had no idea. So we went to go, look in and see what the gym looked like. It's really exciting to see just the, I don't know, those are spaces that our kids deserve, and that, they feel proud of themselves in, and they see that we value them. And so it's just so exciting to see that. I've also had a chance to spend some time at Garfield. Staff are working so hard to get schools and classrooms open and ready. So people have been working really hard in that regard. And then just to see new spaces at Garfield as well, and then our CTE spaces coming together. So it's been really fun these last couple of days. And it just really brings home to me how important it is. Well, not just how important public education is, but just how important it is for us to be together. And so it's been super valuable, it's been refreshing, and it's been exciting. So really happy about that. And then we are on track for Wildcat and Jaguar for Monday. The team's working hurriedly to continue to make sure those spaces are ready, making sure that they're safe, making sure that they're prepared, making sure that all the structures are in place for students to be back, recognizing that things like supply chain and all those COVID-related components make things challenging to be ready. But all in all, we are off. We are on our way through the school year. We're working hard to follow those safety practices. We're working hard to make sure that all those pieces are in place for our kids, so we can stay open, so we can have a full school year in person. That's really what we're working to attain. So we'll have an education update in a little bit, but it's just been exciting the last couple of days to be in schools with kids and with teachers. So it's really reminds you why you do these jobs. So it's been a blast. One other thing that I wanted to share with you, one other highlight was, so Jermaine Joseph Hayes, we introduced you to her at our last meeting. So she also this year have won the Fulbright Teacher for Global Classroom Programs Award. And so I just think it's another way to recognize folks who are doing great work. So with that program, even though she'll be moving into or has moved into an admin program, she'll be participating in that program this year. She's still not sure where she will visit with her Fulbright. Those things are yet to be determined, but just again, somebody to highlight who's doing some incredible work. So with that, I wanted just to provide you with those updates, and throughout the meeting, we'll continue to talk through a number of details about the start of school and where we're headed. But for now, those were some of the things I wanted to make sure you knew.
Does anyone have any questions for Ryan? No? Okay, the next item on our agenda is ratifying the contract with the Corvallis Education Association. Is there any discussion? Sammy, go ahead, and Vince, and then Vince, you're next.
All right, as I just want to say, as we ratify both contracts, I want to celebrate how the board and the district is pro-students, pro-union, supports its educators, classified staff, and administrators. When we provide the best support for our staff and educators, they will be able to provide the best support for their students and their families. With voting to ratify for these two contracts, it is important to acknowledge and celebrate the district's commitment to provide competitive salaries for its staff with comparator and neighboring districts. And I really appreciate the work, and I'll be excited to vote yes on both contracts.
Okay, Vince, and then Lou.
Sammy, I think, said it best with his prepared statement, but I just wanted to, again, express my appreciation for our district leadership having a pro-kid and pro-labor stance and just stretching as far as they could to provide as much compensation for both of our associations as they possibly could. Funding schools, funding staff in Oregon is challenging. It's really hard, and our district leadership do the best they can, and our staff, come to the table looking to collaborate, trying to find solutions to get the best that they can and they need for their staff. Because you know what, living and working in Corvallis is hard. It's hard on our staff. So I just really appreciate both sides of this equation working so hard to find, you know, a compromise solution that works well and works for our community. Thank you all.
Hey, Lou.
Yeah, a lot of what I would say has already been said, but I did want to add in that I appreciate that there was, it wasn't a rushed process, and that intentionality really shows up in helping support our staff the best we can as a district. That way the students are supported as well. And like Vince already said, one of the things I was going to say too was about the living in the Corvallis area. It can be a lot, and I really appreciate the intentionality with focusing on positions that may not be where they should have been or could be. So I just wanted to acknowledge those couple of points too.
Hey, thank you. Does anyone wish to make a motion to approve this item? The wording for the motion is in your packet. Vince?
I move to approve the contract with CEA for 2021 to 2023.
Second.
Who was that? Okay, Sammy?
He has a smile. We know
Okay.
this.
It has been moved by Vince and seconded by Sammy. Do we have a final discussion? So we have a motion on to approve the contract with the Corvallis CEA. We will take a roll call vote, starting with Director Jones.
Aye.
Director Al-Abdraba.
Aye.
Director White Bear.
Aye.
Director Baker.
Aye.
Director Tomini.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion passes unanimously.
I vote aye as well.
Oh, sorry, Vince.
worries.
I'm trying to keep, it's just keeping track of all the pieces of the screen. I missed you.
You're doing
Good.
great. Keep going.
We really are unanimous. Okay.
So can I add something real, now that you've taken votes on it? So Chris is here as well, and just to again acknowledge the work that we've done together. We've spent a lot of time together over the last year between COVID and MOUs there and getting a contract approved. So we will have a break for a year from negotiations. That doesn't mean we won't be working closely together along the way. And we do have a really good working relationship. So I'm looking forward to continuing that as we move forward.
Okay, thank you.
And Krista has her.
So Krista, would you like to make comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for voting for it. It was a really thoughtful process, as you guys alluded to. And partway through the process, we weren't sure who was going to be here to vote on it, to ratify it. And I just wanted to throw out that the teachers union is so excited to see all of you here who's on our board this year. And we're just super thrilled to work with you. And weird timing, I got a call from the OEA Vice President Enrique Ferreira. And he called me today to say that our names collectively as a union and as a school board and as an HR came up in many conversations about kind of the way business should be done between unions and districts and boards. And they wanted to get my feelings about like how that's even possible. So I did want to say thank you to Peg. I don't know if she's watching. I kind of hope she's not. I kind of hope she's out riding her horse somewhere. But I just wanted to give her a bit, because a lot of that relationship was built over many, many years of, you know, really hard conversations. And I'm really honored to be, you know, taking the torch for her. And I'm excited to work with all of you. So you guys have the teacher support. And thank you for voting yes on our new contract.
Thank you, Krista. Yeah, I think it's that the acknowledgement of the work that was done is really wonderful to hear. I feel like this sort of highlights really the focus on creating a district that works for our kids and supports the people who are working with our kids. So, thank you to everyone who did the work to make this happen. And so the next item on our agenda is ratifying the contract with the Oregon School Employees Association. Is there any discussion there? Vince?
Will you entertain a motion?
I will if there's no one else ready to discuss. So yes, let's have a motion.
I move to approve the financial components of the contract with OSEA for the 2021-22 school year.
I hear a second.
Second.
We've got Therese. So we have, it's been moved by Vince and seconded by Therese. Is there any final discussion? No. So the motion on the floor is to ratify the contract with the Oregon School Employees Association for the 2021-22 school year. We will take a vote. Director Adams, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director White Bear.
Aye.
Director Tomini.
Aye.
Director Baker.
Aye.
Director Jones.
Aye.
And Chair Al-Adraba.
Aye.
And I vote aye. So the ratification of that contract passes unanimously. It looks like we have Mary Marshall here today representing the union. So thank you for joining us. Would you like to make any comments?
Just that it took us a while, but I think between COVID and summer, that was what held us up a bit. It was I don't know, I thought it was a really great bargaining. We all worked really well together. I think we all had the same thing in sight, what was best for the kids and everybody and our employees. And it's just been really great working with everyone on this. And we're looking to the future, and we're excited to be back in school. And I want to thank you all and for all your hard work as well. And Jennifer and Ryan and everyone that worked with us, I want to thank them. They all did a great job. And that's about it. We're just glad to be back to work and working with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I am really just gratified by all the people who work so hard to support our kid and supports our kids and support the people who are working with our kids. And often the members of the OSEA are in the classroom and working closely with kids and play an important role in those classrooms along with the teachers. So thank you for your work.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of things too. Just recognizing that Mary is also so deep in Corvallis and online enrollments right now. For her to be able to step away from it for a minute and join us, we appreciate you for doing that. And again, I think the work that we do together has been successful, and we've been able to find middle ground along the way. And maintain a quality relationship and a positive one. So this year, Mary gets to be at the district office on Fridays with her role in Corvallis Online. So we get to work more closely together on a day-to-day basis as well. So it's been really, really great. So again, thanks to you, Mary, and your team for helping us to get to an agreement.
Thank you.
Great. So the next item on the agenda is public comment, but I don't believe we have anyone signed up for public comment this evening. So we will move on to the education update.
All right. As you come to fondly experience our education updates, we didn't do these pre-COVID, but we continue to do them monthly now as things continue to ebb and flow. And Melissa and I will be co-presenting again just to give you an update as it pertains primarily to health and safety and students coming back to school. So, and we also recognizing that not everyone has had a chance yet to be in some of our new spaces because of keeping volunteers out so far. this is a picture from inside Lincoln, one of our students on the first day of school. So, so we'll have a little bit of that to share as well. Go ahead, next slide. So one of the things that we think is important for us to remember as we continue to move through this pandemic is where our community is. And I think sometimes we need to ground ourselves in that a little bit, recognizing that we are in a community as a whole that has done a really pretty great job of continuing to wear masks, working to be vaccinated, and taking those responsibilities to heart for the community. And so oftentimes we see stories from across the country, and oftentimes those are in places where vaccination rates are low, masking is optional. And so I just think it's always important for us to come back to think about where we live and who we are and what sorts of precautions we've taken as a community to try to keep one another safe. I think that that is something that I don't think we talk about enough. And partially we don't talk about it as much because it's not necessarily sensational news. It's something that just needs to happen and something that we're doing and something we're following up on. So again, my goal is to have school open every day this whole school year. And to do that, we really have put some pretty important pieces into place as a community. We can continue to do better, but those are things that I'm proud of for our community having done. And something that as we talk to our neighbors, that I think we should send appreciation out to them as well, because I do think as a whole, we've done a pretty darn good job.
Sure. So vaccination, as you are all well aware, is now a requirement to work with our students in schools. And we are working through that process with our human resources department. So they went from bargaining, now they're like, you know, a deep dive into vaccinations and making sure all of our staff are vaccinated. And that is a big undertaking. We have several hundred staff members that are being asked to upload vaccination verifications to our HR systems. And then from there, we need to find out who needs to have personal conversations and individual plans made. So there is a lot going on there. Along with that, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about it later too, we also have to work to make sure that people who come into our buildings and work with our students, so volunteers, visitors, and then community members who do regular community activities with our kids are also vaccinated. So that's kind of level 2, and we're preparing for that at the same time. Because we know vaccination is critical and because our staff are required now to be vaccinated, we have lots of opportunities for our staff to attend vaccination clinics as well as the community and our students who are over the age of 12. So we have vaccination clinics next week at LP and then again at Corvallis High School in Crescent Valley later on at the end of the month. So there are many opportunities for our community to be a part of our vaccination push.
Yeah, and for some members of our staff and community, this will be the second opportunity for a vaccine because they came to that those health and wellness fairs at LP a couple of weeks back. So again, trying to make sure that we're mapping that out and providing multiple opportunities for folks. So again, some of the pieces that you probably know because of who you are in terms of being a parent, but these are all things that have sort of come to fruition since we met last, or we have additional details to share. So one of those pieces for us is having students eating outside. That's one other way that we are, if you think about that Swiss cheese model, one other way that we are using prevention and precaution. And so we're going to be eating outside as weather allows. I think that's another piece that's important to know is that we will continue to monitor. These things continue to change and evolve over time. This is not the last educational update that you're going to receive from us. And primarily that's because we are continuing to learn new things that are important to put into place, but we're also adjusting and adapting to new conditions. So that's where we are right now. That's our plan, and something that we look forward to doing all fall as the weather stays like this.
We talked about last time also the other layer that we've put into our layers of prevention strategies are testing. So we will continue our diagnostic testing at school for students and staff who become sick while they're at school or symptomatic at school. But our new addition is the screening test. And I was talking about it after just a phone call with our representative at our last board meeting. And now we have a lot more details in place. And we have sign-up forms available on our website. This is optional for our students. And we are partnered with Willamette Valley Toxicology to run those tests weekly. We had a soft start, so we kind of were a little bit quiet about getting it ready and going. And we already have 176 students who've signed up to do screening testing. So we're going to start pushing more of a media blitz to get more people involved in signing up for screening, and we're hoping to see a lot more students. If you look at where the students are who are signing up, it's obviously very heavily in elementary because those are the places where we find our students who are mostly unvaccinated, and that's what the screening test is for. We also have the opportunity for our staff to opt in if they are unvaccinated, to opt in for screening tests that they can do confidentially at home as well.
So as we also talked about last time, that we will continue to use that iPass system as another important tool. I receive those every day. Every morning I have those in my phone as well. And I'm going in and thinking about my kids and whether or not they have any symptoms that day. And then I'm doing one for myself. So while it feels cumbersome and laborious sometimes, it's just a good reminder and something that I have to tangibly do every day to confirm it. And then information by scanning it at sites allows people to know where I've been. So I think it's just another good precautionary tool for us to continue to use, and something that I anticipate we'll be using throughout the school year. So expect those emails to continue to come in.
Definitely. Like I was saying before, we're not going to be bringing visitors or volunteers into our buildings until later on this fall, so that we can get a process in place for how we're going to verify vaccination status. We want to make sure and keep our kids and our staff safe, but especially our students with volunteers who are working closely with them. So we'll keep you updated as to when we have a process ready for that verification later on, probably end of this month.
And I think it's one of those pieces that I also want folks to recognize that we don't, that we take it to heart. We had some folks that were able to volunteer to help us get our spaces ready before school started. And several of those volunteers said to me that, you know, I'm really disappointed that I'm not able to be here the first day of school to be helping. And at the same time, when I'm able to explain, one of the reasons is because we need to have these systems in place, and we have to get them in place for our staff before we get them in place for our volunteers. There's understanding and recognition of that, but also still this, you know, feeling of I want to be there and I want to be helping. So it is something that we did make the decision lightly, and we know it's not necessarily always the most popular decision, but it is something that we need to do to help as we continue to move forward. Wanting to make sure that our kids are in school every day and we have good systems in place. So that's something that we're working on. And I recognize even having new spaces, right? Wanting to go ahead and volunteer in a new beautiful school or in a new beautiful wing. I totally get that too. We're just not quite ready, but we're working on it.
So earlier this week, OHA and ODE came together and sent out a school health advisory. It was the first one that they had ever done, and they want to continue to do that as you know, as kind of what's happening, the climate as far as what's happening with the I'm so sorry, with the virus changes. They want to make sure and send out information to us. It could be regional, it could be statewide. So this was a statewide advisory. And I really wanted to point out a couple of things about the bullets that you see on the screen. The first two bullets are really about the community and the help that we need from the community, because the entire purpose of the advisory and putting these kinds of recommendations out to our families and to our staff and to our students and community is about keeping our kids in person full-time at school. That's what we want, and Ryan talks about it all the time. That is the goal, in person and full-time. So the first two bullets are about our community and what they can do to help us there. If you're in the community and you come into contact with school-age children, getting vaccinated is the #1 thing that you can do to help us to keep our kids in school. And also, if you are a family of school-age children, you should think about limiting those gatherings with people from other households, only because bringing more people together is really how this virus likes to jump around and replicate. The last two bullets, though, are about what schools need to do. And I wanted to point this out because this is another one of those things that is different. I think the same as with visitors and volunteers and being able to come into the school immediately. One of the things that we look forward to as parents is all of the extracurricular activities that happen at school, and then also those chances to come into the building and do the open house with the curriculum night. And they're going to look different again this year as we start off, because with the Delta variant and the way that that virus is spreading, we really need to be responsible in what we do with large groups of people versus the ability to do that online. We learned last year we could do it, and we did it well, and we're going to continue that again this year.
So that's the last slide, other than the one that was going to send you to in an hour or so. So we'd like to open it up for questions. But again, some of the information you've heard before, but again, we just wanted to continue to be outward facing with our communication around the steps that we're taking and why those are so important. So again, open houses, curriculum nights, those kinds of activities are going to be online this fall. Again, as one other way of making sure that precautions are in place. Things like ribbon cuttings and some of those other activities, the celebrations, we're in that same place. So again, it's just where we are. It's not where we want to be, but it's the reality of where we're at currently. So just wanted to make sure that everybody had that information as you're talking to members of the community. So any questions?
Vince?
Yeah, Melissa, can you go back over the screening tests and maybe discuss in a little more detail what that looks like? And so what parents can expect if their kid becomes symptomatic at school, what's going to be offered? And if they want to do testing, what is that going to look like process-wise?
Sure. So the Binax testing that we do at school, the diagnostic testing for when you become symptomatic at school, this is something we had done the last 6 weeks of school at the end of last year. So it's kind of familiar to our staff and they're ready to move forward with it. If a student or staff member gets sick at school, they come to the health room, and any of those symptoms, if any of the symptoms are presenting are one of those symptoms that we see on our COVID list, both primary and secondary, we will offer the opportunity to take a diagnostic test. That diagnostic test is a self-administered nasal swab that is then a quick test, and within 15 minutes we can get a result, and that result will tell us whether or not that person, individual student or staff, have COVID. If that test is negative, because they have symptoms that are that are presenting that should send them home, we will ask them to go home anyway and encourage them to see their primary care physician as soon as they can. If it's positive, again, we'll ask them to go home and also check in with their primary care physician. So that's the diagnostic test. And we have that in all of our buildings and also here at the district office in case any of our district office staff come up symptomatic. And the second test is a screening test. And that test is not for people who have symptoms. That's just a regular weekly test to see how you're doing as you're walking the universe as an unvaccinated person or student. Those tests you can sign up for online. They're on our website on our COVID health and safety page. There's some consent forms that need to be filled out. And then after that, what will happen is at school, and I'll just use an example, on Mondays at school, the students who are doing screening testing will have that dropped in their backpacks as they head out the door. They should swab that night with their parents at home and then bring the test back on Tuesday morning. The tests will all be picked up by Willamette Valley Toxicology, taken to their laboratory, and then they'll have screening results within 24 hours. And those people who have signed up, those families who have signed up, are signed up on a web page called Lab Dash. That's what you're going to be doing as you sign up for this. And that Lab Dash will notify you as soon as your test is ready as to whether or not you have you've shown up positive or negative.
Awesome, thank you. That was the detail I was looking for. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Lou?
Sorry to ask my question about the screenings. That's pretty amazing. I'm glad that that's happening. And so any of the students can be signed up for the screening one?
Yeah, any students can sign up and it's free. There's no cost associated with it whatsoever.
That's great. And I had a question about precautions for the buses,
Okay.
especially with some of the recent headlines that have come up across the state, perhaps in areas that are not quite as vaccinated as Benton County, but I didn't hear that in the update. And I know that there's probably questions out there about the buses.
Sure. The first thing is you should know that any of our contractors, and that includes STA, will have to assure us that their bus drivers are vaccinated by October 18th. So all of our drivers will be vaccinated. And then as far as students on the bus, masks are required. That's a federal law, but we would have had them required anyway. They have to ventilate the bus, which is drop all the windows as long as the temperature is over 55 degrees. They have to drop all the windows down so that there's outside air ventilating through the bus. And students are going to be, they start seating from the back to the front so that we don't have students crossing each other, crossing paths closely. And they're sitting them one student per seat. And then if we have some extra students, we'll obviously allow students from the same family to sit together on a seat, but they're also, if they have to, they'll fill in some of those seats with a second student. It's not ideal that way. We're really hoping that we can do as much as we can as far as this physical distancing. But when we think about the layers of prevention, we have ventilation, we have a vaccinated driver, we have masks on, and for some of those bus rides, they are a little bit shorter, not all of them, but some of them.
Cool, thanks. And last question has to do with classroom setup, especially in some of the larger classes. I've heard that some students are shoulder to shoulder in classes. And I'm curious about if there's anything being discussed for, those are more like high school level classes. I feel like the elementary schools are a little bit more spread out and may have as many students in their classes. So if there's any talk about spreading them across different spaces or not.
So I know that the custodial crews and the admin worked really hard to make sure that they had seating 3 feet apart, and that's center of seat to center of seat. But also within the resiliency framework, the COVID resiliency framework that the state gave us, they were pretty clear that 3 feet is what we'd like you to do. But if putting students 3 feet apart creates a situation where students are not able to attend class for a full day because you can't get enough students in the building, then you can shrink that 3 feet to something smaller. When that happens, then, and if we have an exposure, then we will obviously keep that in mind when we're talking about exposure, because our quarantine exception is about kids being 3 feet apart and masked. So if they're less than 3 feet apart and masked, then we're probably going to need to do quarantine if there's an exposure. So we'll try to spread out as much as we can, but the other piece of guidance is that we're being told is to make sure our kids are able to come to school and not creating a situation where they can't due to space.
One of the things I would add is that there are classes based on enrollment and also based on the dollars that came through from the feds that have allowed us to add some additional staffing. Our classes are smaller this year in terms of students than they traditionally have been. So while there may be some classes that are shoulder to shoulder, like you described, there would be fewer of those this year than there have been in a normal or a typical school year. So just kind of another piece of information as well.
Great, thanks. That's really helpful because that way families know it's not every class may be in that situation, and that's awesome that those dollars were spent to help reduce the class sizes. Thanks, Melissa and Ryan.
Thank you.
Hey, Therese and then Sammy.
Thanks, Sarah. I had a question. I wanted to make sure that I understood it correctly. You were talking about people when they about seeing a primary care physician. I was wondering, is it a requirement that a person see a primary care physician, or is it a recommendation?
Thank you for clarifying that. It is not a requirement. It's just a recommendation if they have a family doctor that they can go and see. So thank you for clarifying.
And just as a follow-up to that, then I know that in the past we have had within our schools, we've had like school navigators who have helped families. Yes. One of the issues with primary care physicians right now is that it is really hard to get a doctor. I'm working with families who have been trying to find physicians for months now. And so I was wondering if the district has any resources or community partnerships in place that would help families who don't have medical care, don't have a primary or family doctor established to help them navigate that process and obtain a family doctor.
So I would say you sort of identified one of the ways that we would go about that would be through coordination with our health navigators. The other folks that would help with that would be Sarah Devine and that team as well. So and then also so I would say if it was a family looking for those resources to reach out to their school counselor or someone at the school that they feel comfortable sharing that information with, that would be the best way to move forward in getting that connection made.
And then we also we have 6 district RNs working for us right now, which is awesome and still not enough, but we are really excited that they're with us. And we have a COVID nurse team that have a COVID nurse hotline. Any of our families can call that hotline if they have questions, if they need answers about what, seems funny. Should I be sending my kid to school? This is what I'm seeing. This is what he's feeling. A lot of really great information. They are directly connected to Benton County Health and are able to help our families out anytime they call.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tracy. You just knocked a question off my list. Sammy.
Thank you. Just want to really share my appreciation for the work and also echo what I'm hearing from parents, students, and educators alike, that they want in-person learning as much as possible while keeping their students safe. And we're doing the work to do that. The layers of protection, prevention, and also isolation and mitigation are really clearly stated and revised as the dynamic situation changes. One thing I would like to share with the community, and I shared with staff earlier before this meeting, some analysis that I thought is important to share. And I want to verify it first. If you could maybe speak to that right away, that would be great. If not, maybe later on, which is, are our schools safe, and is the data showing that? And what I saw from the numbers, that the positive cases last year of our students, and every case is important, and I feel for them, and I really hope we don't have a further single case more. But what I see is our students, the rate of cases to the general population of students is way less than the rate of positive cases in Benton County community or the state of Oregon. So let me repeat that in another way. If I'm a person living in Benton County, probably my odds are 3 times. And if I live in Oregon, if I remember that correctly, my odds are 2 times if I was a student in Corvallis School District. So that's my initial take from the numbers I saw from the nurses update that's in the packet today. And I want to get to a feel if my reading is a little bit accurate, not necessarily of the odds, but really relatively, is our school safer for our students compared to being in the community at large?
So we haven't had a chance to do that, kind of that statistical analysis to be able to answer that one. But what I can tell you is that what our experience was last year is that many, almost exclusively those cases were coming from outside of school, and students coming to school, and then some sort of screening happening or some sort of notification that they had, that they were positive. I can only think of one case where there was any sort of transmission at school between 2 students. So throughout the whole spring, that was our experience. In terms of limitations and limiting factors, those, the Swiss cheese it works, right? And those are where those factors are in place more than in other parts of the community. So I think that's how I would respond to that without doing a statistical analysis.
Beautiful. Thank you. Really appreciate it. And that's another way to phrase it, is that our students are more likely to, we are more likely to detect the positive case if our students are going to school because of all the measures that we're doing to both protect and detect. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? I have a couple of questions. One is the nurses hotline. I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
How can families find information about it?
I'm going to get that for you.
Okay, thank you.
I think we have it posted on our COVID health and safety webpage.
Okay.
I don't have the number memorized because it's not a 541
Yeah.
number, you know that. But I can get that for you. so
Okay,
that you can
yeah, I
share
just
that
want to
while
make
we're
sure
on.
that families know about that, because I had the same concern as Therese about families who don't have access to a primary care physician.
And I think it's important too to know that when a parent calls in and calls their child in sick, so they're not coming into school, if those symptoms, if any of those symptoms are on that symptom list, we're tracking that, and the nurse is going to call you at home and say, hey, tell me more about the symptoms and what's happening and where you've been and who you've been around, so that we can help to figure out what your next step should be.
Great, thanks. And the other question I had was, I hope this doesn't happen, but you mentioned needing the possibility of needing to quarantine if that happened. So do we have sort of systems in place so that if a group of students has to quarantine, they'll be able to, continue getting access to instructors and school and keep going?
We're going to do a good combination of what we learned from last year and what we've done prior to, pre-pandemic. So pre-pandemic kids went on vacation all the time.
Yeah.
And we know what that feels like to put together work or give them some assignments and things to do while they're gone. But what we also learned last year is how critical those learning management systems are. So I think about Seesaw in our elementary schools and Canvas in our secondary programs. Teachers continue to use Canvas. They continue to put their assignments in those Canvas, learning management system places. So our kids always have access to their work electronically. So between those two, what we used to know and what we just learned, I think we'll have a good system for those kids who are out, who really are just not thinking we're going to have as many students based on all these layers of protection and that quarantine exception. But some, things happen.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And I, as we were leading up to the beginning of school, have talked to lots of parents who were anxious, and as a parent and as somebody who's worried about all the kids in the district, everybody kept saying, we have all these things in place, we have all these layers. We're in a community with a high vaccine acceptance rate. We're in a community with a high mask acceptance rate. I think we're in the sort of best place we can be to open schools this year. And, it's, a lot of gratitude to the district for putting all those systems in place and making sure we're doing the best we can for our students and our employees. And then also gratitude to the community for allowing us to be able to feel like, okay, I think we can make this work. Because, I think we all know, I definitely saw it in my house. Kids are much happier when they can go to school. So,
yes, they are.
so thank you for all of your work. Does anybody else have a question, or should we move on? Looks like we're ready to move on. So the next item on the agenda is resolution number 210901, the acknowledgement of Hispanic Heritage Month. Does anyone have any comments or discussion on this item? No? Well, I will make a comment. Oh, go ahead, Lou. Your hand blends in with your trees.
I know, it looks like part of the branches.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that I'm really glad that we're discussing this resolution this evening, like some of the other ones we discussed last year, to acknowledge our community a little bit more strongly as a district, and all the identities that folk hold, our students and our staff. And I will say too, as somebody whose existence is a product of migration as well, both voluntarily and forced migration, I think that I feel like this is going to mean a lot to the community. And when I was helping draft the resolution, I was thinking about my great grandma and all that she endured as coming from San Luis Potosi and leaving her indigenous village down there. and becoming a migrant worker in California. And that's part of my origin story. And I know it's part of a lot of our community members' origin stories as well. And I hope that as we continue to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month throughout the years, that our staff and our students and families feel as valued as they should in all the ways. So that's all.
Therese and then Vince.
Thanks. I don't have anything really to add to what Lou said. I'm excited that we have an opportunity to have this conversation. So I will not say anything more so we can get to that.
Vince?
I just want to express appreciation for your leadership and Director Whitebear's leadership in bringing this forward. And just that we're doing this. This is something that's been sitting in, I have a document that's current issues that that things that I've wanted to work on. And this is something that I've wanted to work on since back when I was chair. And so I'm just really pleased to see the board finally taking action and starting to make these recognitions. There's a bunch of them that need to be done, and we can do them each in turn. And it's just really pleasing to see it. I'm looking forward to voting for it.
Shauna?
I'll just add and echo some of the gratitude from fellow board members about seeing resolutions such as these to really elevate the stories, the cultural traditions, and the heritage of, for this month, Hispanic Heritage Month. But, and Vince, as you were alluding to, there are so many different traditions and cultures, languages, and others that we can elevate and raise the stories of. And I think it's important not just for the students and their families whose heritage is being reflected in this month to see this now, but all year celebrated, and also for all students in our community to see one another as part of that same community, to see their stories shared in a way that's meaningful. And it helps students also reflect on their own cultural traditions and experiences and the histories that they carry with them. So I'm just really grateful to see this resolution come to the table and to celebrate that in community together.
Thanks. And Therese, do you have something else, or?
No, I just forgot to put my hand down.
Okay. Okay, thanks. So I was really honored to work on this resolution with Director Whitebear. I'm sort of on the other side of the heritage here, where my family of European descent was brought in and settled land that had been part of Mexico and had become part of the United States. And knowing that history, and I grew up with a father who really had come to really honor and enjoy the Mexican Americans that were in his town. And so I'm thrilled to be able to be part of acknowledging Hispanic Heritage Month and celebrating the people in our community with a Hispanic background or Latinx or however you identify. So I appreciate the board considering this tonight. So do we have a motion? Vince?
I move to approve resolution 21-0901, acknowledgement of Hispanic Heritage Month.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
So it has been moved by Vince and seconded by Sammy. Is there any final discussion? No, in that case, the resolution that we're considering. Oh, Lou, go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure that, because you did mention it, Sarah, that families in community know that because the month is called Hispanic Heritage Month nationally, it also includes folk who identify as part of the Latino and Chicano and Indigenous communities as well. And I wanted to make sure that didn't get lost. Yeah, so.
Yes, thank you. And that is written into our resolution. So that will be there. And this is a resolution that we will be acknowledging Hispanic Heritage Month, every September 15th to October 15th going forward. So I think that's an important piece also. So any other, Sammy?
So I would just want to briefly say I'm enthusiastically supportive and appreciative of Luz and Sarah's leadership on this work. Also, I think this is a great role model of understanding and celebrating our racial diversity and the experiences of our students and families and communities. I would like to invite us to reflect on this conversation that we just had and think about it as a conversation that students will have in their classroom. It's a conversation of celebration, recognition, and accountability to elevate the voices that haven't been heard for a very long time. It's a positive conversation. It's a conversation of learning and growth. This is what we are all about moving forward. And I really think this is how the national and state and rhetoric should be about how we teach race and how we celebrate each other and how we learn. I'm really appreciative of this work and the leadership of the board walking the walk on this work. So thank you, Luz. Thank you, Sarah, and looking forward to vote yes on this motion.
Any further discussion? No, so the resolution is to approve resolution number 210901, Acknowledgement of Hispanic Heritage Month. Director Adams, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director White Bear, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Tomini,
Aye.
Chair Lagraba,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
and Director Baker.
Aye.
And I vote yes also. Passes unanimously. Thank you all. The next item on our agenda, well, the next item, I think, as far as, or the item we just voted on is now we need to put that acknowledgement into action and make it more than a piece of paper. We just acknowledged. I think that's the important part of this step too. The next item on our agenda is the school renaming resolutions. We will do these one by one. There are 3 different separate resolutions, each in your packet and in the materials for this meeting that the public has access to. So we will address one resolution at a time. So let's begin with resolution number 210902, rename Husky Elementary School to Bessie Coleman Elementary School. Is there any discussion? Vince?
So I just want to remind the board that we started this process over a year ago. And I just want to reflect back in that. Actually, it doesn't seem like it's been that long, but it's just been a long, very deliberate process. And I just want to express appreciation for the trust that our community has placed in us, the trust that the superintendent and staff placed in us in taking up this work and doing it in such a diligent way. I want to express appreciation for the task force and the careful handling and bringing these names forward. And I want to express, real sincere appreciation for all the community members who provided input on this process across this whole year. I brought this forward to the board with the help of my colleagues White Bear and Al Abdraba, but it wasn't our idea. Actually, this started with a conversation with Principal Beasley almost 3 years, must be 3 years ago now. And so I really want to thank the Wildcat elementary community for holding this idea and incubating it for a time when the board would actually get to this point. And I'm sorry it took so long, but we're here now. And so thank you so much. I really appreciate this particular one. We're renaming Husky and we're choosing Bessie Coleman, and we're choosing a figure that communicates that every child can fly. And when I say that, I mean that they can succeed in life and make a difference and be a part of their community and their nation. You know, Bessie's success as an aviator echoes the aspiration in every child's heart and the hope of every parent. And so I'm just really, really excited to be at this point that we've come this far and that we're able to take this action. And I'm looking forward to voting yes for the resolution.
Director Whitebear, and then Director Al-Akraba.
Sammy was next, I believe.
Sammy was next. Go ahead, Sammy.
I'll defer to you, Lou. And then I'll go.
Okay, we'll go back and forth like this. I just wanted to also echo the appreciation for the community input that went into these names, all of them, and just how much it's so impactful to see somebody's multiple identities recognized in this way, especially somebody that holds a couple of different marginalized, historically and institutionally marginalized backgrounds, and to have somebody that's a woman and is Black and is Native, I think is really powerful. And I did want to point out for folk, because a lot of times people don't like always know the tribes of people. I did want to point out that Bessie Coleman was African-American and Cherokee, and that's part of her legacy and how she's remembered as both the first African-American and first Native American woman pilot. And I think it's just really inspiring for our students that hold multiple identities, and I'm really excited that we're recognizing that part of her.
Sammy?
Thank you, Sarah. I have a few thoughts I wanted to share as this process took a really long time, and I went into the vault where there is documentation of why we named, or why we school boards made decisions the way they made them in the past 100 and whatever years that the age of the Corvallis school board or the school district is. And there's nothing matches the deliberation, the community engagement that we're doing right now over the decades. It's really phenomenal. And that's what this is about. It's a conscious choice to celebrate all students and communities. It is a decision to celebrate women, especially Native and Black women, and reaffirm that in our schools, no matter their identity or background, every student belongs and is worthy of celebration and recognition. We are setting a standard for our students. Until this moment, there has never been a school building named to a woman of any racial background or named to any Native or person of color. The standard we're setting today is that we acknowledge and celebrate the diversity of what constitutes a hero and a heroine in this community. Starting tomorrow morning, for the first time ever in Corvallis, students will be more likely seeing themselves in the namesake of their school building. For a long time, a school building recognition has been reserved for male presidents and school board members, independent of their commitment to our community values. Today, we are becoming closer to tell our students that belonging and civil service take many, many forms and shapes. With this first motion or resolution, we are giving a message that you can be like Bessie Coleman, the first African-American and Native American woman who sees no limit in the skylines. So she learns a new language, move to a new land, learn to fly and earn a pilot license, and then come back to soar into American skies, advocate for civil rights and racial justice, and create a path for other Black and Native American women to follow her lead. So I really look forward to support these three names and recognize the importance of this work. Thank you for my colleagues, for the school board, for the task force, and for the community, for the overwhelming engagements and emails and deliberation in many forms. So we reached to this decision.
Thank you, Sammy. Therese, do you have your hand up?
Thanks, Sarah. I did have my hand up, and I have a comment that's really applicable to all of the resolutions. And I would really rather end this discussion on Sammy's comment because I like it. And so I'll save mine for another one.
Okay, thank you. I feel the same way. I think Sammy summed up the importance of the choice of Bessie Coleman as the new name for Husky Elementary School very well. So is there any other discussion? Can I hear a motion? Vince?
I move to adopt resolution number 21-0902 to rename Husky Elementary School to Bessie Coleman Elementary School.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
So moved by Vince and seconded by Shauna. Do I hear any, is there any final discussion? So the motion is to approve resolution number 210902 to rename Husky Elementary School to Bessie Coleman Elementary School. Director Adams, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Whitebear, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Tomini, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair El-Adraba,
Aye.
Director Baker,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
and I vote aye. That passes unanimously. We now have a school named after a Black Native American woman. Congratulations. So second on our renaming list is resolution number 210903 to rename Jaguar Elementary School to Catherine Jones Harrison Elementary School. Is there any discussion? Vince?
I'm just so excited to rename the school for Catherine Harrison. In doing this, we're choosing a figure that has chosen to spend her life leading the effort to heal her people's culture and community in the wake of a history of genocide. Catherine Harrison is a person whose impact is, hasn't been just felt in Oregon, but in Corvallis, in our community, and aligns beautifully with our district's goal of real world learning and place-based learning. I'll be very excited to vote yes for this resolution.
Director Whitebear?
I'm gonna probably have something to say about all of them, just like a pre-warning. I'm really excited about this one. Catherine Jones Harris, I was hearing echoing, sorry. Catherine Jones Harrison is a Grand Ronde tribal member. We're on her tribal land in Corvallis. She lived in Corvallis and went to elementary school here. It's just so amazing, all the connections she has just to this place that most of us call home. And I think that's really beautiful to honor her in this way. And to have somebody who had their entire identity as a tribal member taken away through the Termination Act, and for her to fight so hard, not just for her own people, but for the Siletz tribe as well, to be restored. For those of you that don't know, the Siletz tribe was, after termination, was the first tribe in Oregon. I'm getting emotional about this, sorry. Was the first tribe in Oregon and the second in the entire nation to be restored and to gain their sovereignty rights back and to be recognized and have their treaties brought back to be honored, even though they're still not completely honored, we'll say, but they, she was part of that. And that's so amazing that we're going to name a school after her. And I know that I've been watching the tribal coverage of this and have seen so much excitement about the school being named after her. Another thing that I think is also really awesome is that the previous name of the school was one of somebody who viewed Indigenous people really poorly, like the idea of democracy that was shown through the leadership of tribal nations, and then described us very poorly. I'm not going to repeat the the bad things that have been said, because I don't want to bring up the traumas, but to have an Indigenous woman from these lands in this area as that new name on that building, I think is really powerful. And I can't wait for the students to learn more about her, not only Bessie Coleman and Letitia Carson, but Catherine Jones Harrison is just awesome. And I had the privilege of interacting with her when I worked for the Grand Ronde Tribes quite some years ago, and she's just one of the best storytellers and a sweet person. And I know that her family is probably super proud right now too.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? I entertain a motion. Director Whitebear.
I raised my hand too fast because I need to find the wording, but I will start saying it really slow. I make a motion. It pulled up the wrong one. My bad. This is embarrassing. I move to adopt resolution number 21-0903 to rename Jaguar Elementary School to Catherine Jones Harrison Elementary School.
Adam seconds the motion. Adam seconds the motion.
I got it. Thank you, Vince. So it's been moved by Director Whitebear and seconded by Director Adams. Is there any final discussion? So the motion is to approve resolution number 210903 to rename Jaguar Elementary School to Catherine Jones Harrison Elementary School. Director Adams, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Whitebear, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Tomini, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair Al-Abdraba.
Aye.
Director Baker.
Aye.
And Director Jones.
Aye.
I vote aye also. Passes unanimously. We have a school named after a Native American woman from this area who played an essential role in reestablishing the acknowledgement of her people. So thank you for that. Feels good. Next resolution we have is resolution number 210904. Rename Wildcat Elementary School to Letitia Carson Elementary School. Sammy, have some comments?
Yes, I would just want to say, as we name the third school today, just like Bessie Coleman School and Catherine Jones Harrison School, we can find the motivation in Letitia Carson's story and know that despite the odds and systemic racial oppression, we can assert our rights to claim land and be celebrated members of our community, even if the laws of the land were against our rights and belonging. It's very important for our students as they learn about civics and ethics is to stand up for their rights, even if the laws of the day are against them. That's the inspiration I find in Letitia Carson's story. And I hope as we learn more about her story, our students become stronger, better, and more motivated and feel that they belong. Again, with gratitude, I am looking forward to vote yes and share the excitement that our students and families and staff have for these three names.
Thank you. Therese and then Vince.
Thanks, Sarah. I guess my comment is really applies to all of these because it's really about the naming process. I just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge the community members who reached out, who were generally in support of the renaming, but wondered about the wisdom of renaming these schools after people, and thought, you know, is there a cautionary tale in naming a building after someone, and then what will happen in time when, that process is reevaluated. And I just wanted to share that did give me pause. I did think about that for a moment, and I did wonder about, is that really the best choice, right? Like, there are lots of things we could, there are lots of names that we could choose for our buildings that would at least appear to be neutral. But I wanted to acknowledge that I thought about it. And then I wanted to just share where I landed and why I support these names and naming them after people. Because if in fact it is, well, first, there is no name that will be neutral, because any name that we choose towards something will still be a name that is chosen away from something else. If we decide not to name our buildings after people because we are renaming them, having been named after people that we have determined does not align with our values, then if we decide not to do that, then while it's true that we won't be opening ourselves up to a criticism about the names that have been selected, we will also be saying, hands off. We don't think that there are people who can represent values that we think should stand the test of time. And I'm not sure that's the message that we would want to send. So that was my first thought about that, was that even if we name in what appears to be neutral, it will still be naming away from something or towards something. And if we have the opportunity to name towards something, these three names, these three people seem really important and valuable historically, and to our community, historically to our community, symbolically to the goals and the vision of our district. So the other thought I had is that we have been naming buildings after people for centuries, mostly white male people, but we've been doing this for centuries. So if it is a bad idea to name them after people, and I'm not all knowing, so it may in fact be a bad idea, I'm okay with that bad idea finally being extended to a group of people that have been left out of that bad idea in the past, and have the opportunity for their names to come up and be discussed. Because you know what? If it's not a good idea and we put their names on this building, people will talk about them, and they'll talk about their contributions, or they'll have a conversation. And I think that's a conversation that would be good for our community to have. So I'm sure there's no name that would satisfy every single person, but these three names, they align with what our district has said it is about. They align with our community. They align with the people in our community. They align historically with our community. And so I appreciate the consideration that we maybe take a safe route. I think the better message to our kids in this district at this moment in time is that we don't need to choose a safe route, because we can choose a route that includes them, even if it means that we may spark additional controversy down the road. So that's it. I think that applies to all of them, and it's not nearly as poetic as some of the things other folks have said, but I felt it was important for those that shared about this potential of taking a middle road to just know that their comments were read and they were considered, and they did spark for me an intellectual process of thinking it over, and an emotional process of trying to decide what I hope for, what my goals and my hopes are for our district. And so I appreciate their comments for that reflection that it allowed me to have. And now I'm ready to vote for that last one and to make this something that we move forward with in our district.
Thank you, Vince, and then Lou.
I'm reminded that this isn't the end, that it's the end of the beginning, that we're closing the first chapter of this process of examining the names on our facilities and considering what impact they have. So I'm really excited to be voting for this resolution as well. We're in Letitia Carson, we're choosing a figure who communicates what is possible with courage, dedication, and perseverance despite tremendous obstacles. Letitia's story asks us to wonder what she might have accomplished if she had not faced the challenges that were placed before her simply for being a Black woman in Oregon in the 19th century. Letitia's legacy demands that we ask the same question today with regards of our children in our community. How far might they go? What might they achieve if we can remove identity-based barriers from their education? And I submit that this district and this board should find out. So I look forward to voting yes.
Thank you, Lou, and then Shauna.
Like the other ones, I'm really excited about this name chosen too, with its local context and the powerful story that Letitia Carson has. And there's so many possibilities with the Letitia Carson Legacy Project that is being established as well, that I'm super excited for students from the school to be able to partner with, hopefully, if that's the direction they choose to go. But it's just, her story is really inspiring, like has already been said. And there was one more thing I was gonna say about this. Okay. I'm just really amped up right now, clearly. But with all the names coming forward right now, one of the things I wanted to re-highlight that was in the original resolution from last year is that students are going to be able to learn about all three of these women, their stories, who they were and are, every year of their experience in those schools. And I think that part of the resolution is what helps guide this as more integrated within the schools themselves, and not just having a name for the sake of a name and it being awesome, but also that educational component. And I'm just super excited for the students across all the schools, and hopefully students in other schools will learn about these women as well, and community members. And I wanted to make sure that we mention that again as we're wrapping up the third name here.
Shauna?
Thank you. My comment echoes Lou's in many ways, that going through a name change to really look at elevating the stories and experiences of these three amazing women, Bessie Coleman, Catherine Jones Harrison, and Letitia Carson, is as meaningful as we make it. And as I shared at a past board meeting, and some of you know, I went to Hoover Elementary School here in this district and never knew who that school was named for, never knew anything about the history of the person that that school was named for. And I hope that moving forward with these name changes comes that deep and meaningful connection to those histories, and that becomes a part of the learning that students have, not just in those individual schools, but across the district. So I just wanted to give a nod to that as well.
Thank you. So I received an email this afternoon from Lauren Gwynn, who is on the leadership team for the Letitia Carson Legacy Project. And I felt that her email really reflected the excitement of the community and the connections that we are making through these name changes. So I asked her permission to read her comments in place of my own comments this evening. So she granted me that permission. And so this is what was sent to me by Lauren Gwynn. And she's in support of all three resolutions, but she's particularly excited about the Letitia Carson renaming. She is a parent of 2 children in the Corvallis Public Schools and a community member, and is also on the faculty of Oregon State in the Center for Small Farms and Community Food Systems. And as I said, she's on the leadership committee for Letitia Carson Legacy Project. She says, our project is a partnership of Oregon State University, the Corvallis Albany branch of the NAACP, Black Oregon Land Trust, and Oregon Black Pioneers. Oregon State University partners on the project include the College of Agricultural Science, the College of Forestry, the College of Liberal Arts, and the Extension Service. OSU now owns most of the land that Letitia Carson and her husband homesteaded in the Soap Creek Valley. Renaming Wildcat School for Letitia Carson is a tremendous opportunity to honor the legacy of Black women and their families in Oregon, with deep connection right here in our community. Our Letitia Carson Legacy Project team is excited about opportunities to partner with Letitia Carson Elementary School and the whole Corvallis School District to develop dynamic and meaningful learning experiences for our kids, families, and community. We envision programs and projects grounded in our project's values of justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and anti-racism, and in the Corvallis School District's commitment to equitable access to an inclusive and rigorous learning experience for all students. Letitia Carson's deeply inspiring story lets us retell the history of this place, Corvallis, the Willamette Valley, Oregon, the West, and the US as a whole, from a more complex and multi-layered perspective, including acknowledging the genocide of Indigenous people, the theft of their land by the US government that cleared the way for Letitia Carson, a strong and determined Black woman, to overcome the deep anti-Black racism over time. Renaming Wildcat Elementary for Letitia Carson would be a public and enduring testament to this history. Thank you for making this important change. Our team looks forward to working with you. Laura Gwynn and the other members of the Letitia Carson Legacy Project, Maya Hansen, Tiffany Monroe, Jason J. Dorsett, and Larry Landis. So, do I have a motion? Then, or Sammy, I think you were first.
I move to adopt resolution number 21-0904 to rename Wildcat Elementary School to Letitia Carson Elementary School.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any final discussion? No, so the motion is to approve resolution 210904, rename Wildcat Elementary School to Letitia Carson Elementary School. Director Adams, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Director Whitebear, how do you vote? Director Tomini,
Aye.
Chair Al-Avdraba,
Aye.
Director Baker,
Aye.
and Director Jones.
Sarah, I vote aye, and I'm so happy to say that my child is here watching this vote take place this evening. And if my hopes come true and he grows up and just lives next door to me for the rest of his life, his children may attend the schools that we have renamed here this evening. And so how cool is that? So thank you for the privilege of getting to cast this vote. So aye.
Thank you, and I vote aye. Passes unanimously. We now have a school named for a determined Black woman who overcame deep racism to accomplish good things for herself and her family. Thank you. That feels good. The next item on our agenda is the continued review of the building renaming. As a reminder, this is the first reading of this proposed resolution, and it's time for us to discuss and revise the wording for the resolution. There are no motions necessary when making edits. We will not be taking a vote on this evening. The only action that will be needed is when this resolution comes back for adoption at our next meeting. I will now open the floor to board members who would like to discuss the proposed wording of this resolution. So with no comments, we'll move on to, Lou. Yes, please, Lou.
I just wanted to make a comment on this one that it's, even though it's a first read, it's exciting to see the work being continued beyond tonight's votes, and in that reflection on the gratitude to the community work that has gone in to getting us this far, and that will continue to go forward with it as well.
Thank you. Yes, I think continuing this work is key. I think the engagement and the excitement and the education that has happened with the renaming of 3 of our schools has been really exciting to see. So I'm glad to see this work continuing. The next item on our agenda is a discussion of board goals. Do we want to take a break before we do that, or would people like to keep moving? Break, no break? Okay, so for what I need to do to,
I just say we're gonna take a break.
we're gonna take a break.
I could say when we're gonna return.
We will return in, say, 10 minutes. Okay.
That's great.
It's great. It feels really good.
Oh. Safety, safety. Report it.
Wow.
Is this yours?
That's fine. Have that come from?
It's on
Oh,
the
did it
floor.
roll?
Yeah.
It's on here. At one
Sorry.
point, I know it's funny because I was doing a superintendent report, and I'm like, that looks like a Nerf dart.
You all, I don't know if you want the audio muted while you're on break or not, but just letting you know it wasn't muted.
Just hit a mute. I hit mute.
Meeting of the Corvallis School Board is back in session. The next item on our agenda is a discussion of board goals. As a reminder to the board, this is an opportunity to review and revise as needed the current board goals. Your packet includes the board goals, so members of the public can find that in the meeting materials also. Please note that no motions are needed when making edits. The only action that will be needed is when the goals are finalized and ready for an adoption at a future meeting. So I will open the floor to board members for discussion, and we'll start with goal number 1. Sammy.
Well, I'll start with the general one, and then I have a comment about a future, another goal. But I would like to share is regarding where we are right now with. We are in a stage where we defined the goals in 2018, and we have modified them, refined them in a really positive and strategic manner where we're not changing the direction of the ship very strongly. However, we're making sure that we're making conscious decisions around the wording, the strategies, really elaborate on our direction. As a midpoint, I believe it's important for us to see where we are and if we're headed toward the right direction, and if these goals need refinements. For goal 1, I think we're doing really well at it. One comment or thing that I saw from the community is just the analysis or the understanding of how we're doing in the interim. And it's important that we need to care about graduation rates, and we're doing really well with graduation rates. And we need to celebrate also the interim points that we're doing really well at as well, 9th grade and 3rd grade. Personally, I don't believe there's a change needed, but looking forward to hear my colleagues what they think about it.
Okay, thank you, Vince.
My comment is not about goal 1. It's actually about process. And Sammy, I thought you were going in this direction when you started your comments, because we adopted these in 2018. Actually, these were conceived over a year prior. And so the reality is that we do need to review these, but not in this manner. I think that we need to do a much more comprehensive process where we're bringing in staff, we're looking at data, we're checking in with the community. The reality is that, when these goals were conceived originally, we didn't even imagine something like a global pandemic and what the impacts would be on student learning. And I think Sammy's absolutely right that the district has worked very hard in the intervening 5-6 years, and progress has been made. I mean, we have made strides in student achievement, in student experience, but I think that we need to. I find it really hard to look at these goals in a critical way because we just haven't seen data in quite a while now. And so I'm not feeling confident where I can critique these goals. Really, I know that they're our North Star, but I don't know where we're at. It's something that gives me a lot of pause as a board member. But I do think that, that we should. I think this is a good opportunity to think about what process do we want to step into? What do we want it to look like over the next year, or where do we want to go with these goals? I think should be the question here, not are we achieving them, because we don't have any data to bounce that off of. We have no way to evaluate that right now. I'll pause there.
Lou?
I have some similar thoughts, and also I feel like the way that they're written right now just keeps them locked as our goals. And like some of them, I'm like, okay, we already do number 3. You know what I mean? We're doing number 5. So it's kind of like, at what point do we just say those goals, we've met them at this point, and to bring in new goals instead of continuing to add more and more goals to the list? because we do want to make sure that when we're establishing goals that we have them where there's enough to manage them at the same time, right? And also it's healthy to say it's okay to say, like, I think we've met that goal, like students are engaged in real world learning, right? Maybe not at every single school, but it's not outlined in the goal of when that goal is necessarily met. And so that's kind of where my thoughts were when I was looking at them earlier. And also with goal 6 of, sorry if I'm not going in order, sir. And also in goal 6, I was just going to recommend that we continue to hold that one in, since we're still experiencing a global pandemic, and just change the date on it, right? Because I think we still need to be able to do that. And anyhow, I know this sounds all rambly and stuff, but that's where I'm at with it. It's like, at what point are we going to say, okay, we can move on to new goals? Because I want the district to continue to grow, right? And we can't continue to grow if we're staying with the same goals that we may have met.
Ryan?
Yeah. Usually don't put my hand up, but I felt like that was the way to do it this time. Changing things up, I guess. So I think so one of the things that makes me think a little bit about the conversation is just sort of goals and priorities. And so what I hear us talking a little bit about are things that we are doing, but so those things may look more like priorities for us moving forward, rather than goals or strategic goals that we're working on. Because one of the things that's really important to me in this document is to be able to communicate out to staff. I did this with our both our new teaching staff and our new classified staff just last week or the week before. And I talked about each one of these goals and why it was important and how it was developed and what it means for us in action. And so I would just caution us not to lose those areas, at least maintain them as sort of a priority statement if we're going to think about modifying or adjusting or changing those goals.
Shauna?
Yeah, and just building off of that, as I look through these past board goals, or as they are the current board goals, some of them are easier to measure than others. And so thinking back to Lou's point about how do we check something off and say this goal has been accomplished, but then also monitor over time, is it still continuing to be accomplished and achieved in the way that the district would hope and want, or does it need to come back as a priority goal? And so thinking as we look at either modifying or creating new goals, how are we very intentionally looking at how we then communicate progress on those goals and making sure that that's an embedded piece of it. And that probably will also be a big help in terms of what you're talking about too, Ryan, around communicating these goals and progress over time, being able to look and see how do we tell that story, but how do we actually capture that through whether it's data or in other ways to really be able to pair goals with those specific outcomes of some type.
Thanks, Lou.
I just wanted to go back to that thought that Ryan just brought in about like being priorities and what's a goal and what's a priority. I think that's a great way to frame it, because I know we've talked about goal 2 before about like, I don't know how long it's going to take us to get there. It's going to be a very, very long time. And does that make sense to be necessarily a goal, or is that an overarching commitment of the district, right? And what are the other areas that are priorities that aren't necessarily the goals for each year? Like, I understand like that's an overarching goal, like we want to get there, but like, and we talk about where the progress has been made when we do Ryan's evaluation and we get updates, we are thinking about where they meet these goals. So I hope community does know, like, we do think about the goals and we look at where we're at when we hear Ed updates and Ryan's updates, and we hear all the things and see things happening, and even like the bond updates and everything. So it's not like we're not constantly thinking like where things fit in and us getting there. But again, I feel like we're almost in a circular pattern with the way that the goals are written, and like figuring out which ones are commitments, which ones are priorities, and what are the goals to reach in this year and are within a certain amount of years. That's the other thing, like the measurable part of it. And I'm saying that with all respect to them being developed a few years ago too. Like I understand and I see the commitment, and I've also seen us make so much progress towards a lot of these, and it's awesome. So I'm thankful that these goals were set too.
Yeah, I'm gonna make my comments now. So I did, one of the first things I did when I was on the board was attend the retreat where we started the work on this. And I think Sammy and Vince were there. I don't know if Therese was there or not. So it was an all-day retreat that started the formulation of these goals. And then it took a long time to come to a point where they were finalized. And they were really impactful in that I felt like it gave the district some focus for the work we did. And it was really, sometimes putting the goals together felt like a bit of a slog, but then to see after they were done that it was sort of this focusing document for the school district that allowed the district to really work on moving forward in ways that we were prioritizing. And so I think, a little bit of what Vince said about we don't really know where we are right now. I'm sort of feeling like we almost need an update on where we are on each of these goals so that we can decide, is this still a goal or is this sort of an ongoing expectation that we are going to be keeping track of, but it's not something we're moving toward anymore. It's somewhere we are and we want to stay there. And then if there are new things we want to bring in that are goals that we want to keep moving toward. But that's, that sounds to me like another retreat. So I think we need to, I think maybe step back for a second from looking at each individual goal and really think about how we want to approach these goals and the goals going forward. So Sammy, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I have a lot actually. Let me try to structure my thoughts. The first one is this is really good discussion. I remember I told Ryan when we were in the retreat, let's do 40 years goal. And he told me, Sammy, elections happen every 4 years. So probably you want to do it in a way that's manageable, and also boards change, communities change. So goals will change as new boards will come and go. And Ryan had more foresight than I had. So I'm really appreciative that we did 4 or 5 years goals. So that's one thing, which is, yes, we need to be flexible. I can see the significance of us taking one goal out or in, as people see it as part of their evaluation, starting from the superintendent, part of their reports, part of their fundraising for the foundation. So really the dynamics of the goal is really important. There's so many cascading effects of it. That's where I think the documents in the packet is not giving fair justice to the system that we're working with, because it's only states the goals. And I would like to refer us to the website or the PDF with the website, which is the strategic goals document that we passed, which is under each goal, there are strategies. And I remember former Director Judy Ball really working hard on prioritizing one strategy over the other and giving justification of it. And we're debating that. And I think that's a venue for us to really address what my colleague Lou was mentioning about sometimes we need to adjust or reflect on different priorities. So while the commitment toward the goal might be the same, and I'll give an example, real world learning, near and dear to my heart, we might want to elevate a strategy over the other, or we might want to add a new strategy if we're seeing the progress toward the goal either being achieved fully and we need to enhance our achievement to it. More likely we'll never be there, but we might be achieving it in one aspect, but not other aspects. So for real world learning, we've seen the career and technical education side, the cultural competency side, the dual immersion and language and literacy side. So the stewardship for the environment and the civics, all of these are real world learning, and how we define our strategies and how we prioritize them will influence funding, policies, decision-making, curriculum, etc. So I feel we need to really discuss both the goals and the strategies. With that, and Vince probably might want to add to that. It's his expertise, but I'm going to start with it and I'll let him carry on with that, which is, with that, we need to acknowledge what's the role of the board, what's the role of the superintendent, and what's the role of the collaborative work between both. Well, of course, we all work together toward defining each one of these segments, but I would say the board more likely leans heavily on the goal statement, the strategies, both the board and the superintendents as well. And then as you go to the metrics, and that's something we see often from Ryan, which is what are we going to measure, what kind of processes we're measuring, and what kind of outcomes we're measuring. That has been traditionally that Ryan would propose those and will provide those with the understanding some things cost more if we want to measure them, and it's might worth to invest into measuring them. Sometimes we want to lean on what can be measured already. So giving him latitude to define how he's going to measure progress to accomplish the strategies and the goals is really important. But really to see the big picture in a strategic goal plan or strategic goals document, we really need to see both the goals, the strategies in what order, and then the metrics and outcomes as presented by the superintendent or developed by the superintendent. So that's my 2 cents around really the perspective around this, and maybe how can we tweak and change goals and strategy by prioritizing our definition of which strategy takes more priority than the other.
Vince?
So Sammy eloquently covered my second point that, you know, we need that I'm suggesting a top to bottom review, not tonight, but a rather protracted process akin to like what we did when we developed these. I want to go back to that idea of we're calling these the board goals. And I have to tell you, lots of boards get confused with this. It's kind of confusing because we have superintendent goals and we've got board goals, we've got district goals, and which is which. And what we're talking about here are district goals. And I think the comment from the superintendent and other board members really speaks to that it's not just the board who owns these goals, it's the whole organization. We're all connected to that because they were developed collaboratively. And that we all hold ourselves accountable to these goals. And so it's really important to make that distinction that, you know, the board, we can have goals for ourselves, but that's really germane just to our processes. The superintendent, he has goals that are connected to his evaluation. And then the district has district goals, which if you read Brene Brown, these are your big, hairy, audacious goals. And so that's what those are. You know, another thing, you know, is that by virtue of where I work, I get to see a lot of strategic plans. And one thing I've noticed about strategic plans for school districts is they all kind of look the same. And that's because school districts are very narrow in their purpose and what we do. And so it's kind of makes sense that most strategic plans, you know, kind of have the same sort of things in them. And to that point, it's not the plan itself isn't really what's most important. It's the process that we go through. And I want to come back to this, you know, that we have members of the board who were never involved in the process of developing these goals. We have staff that have left and have been replaced by people who were not part of that process. And so I think that that's why I'm kind of suggesting that we take a pause, step back, and then really reflect on what type of process do we want to engage in to look at these and recalibrate them based on the situation that we're in and the availability of data. And I really appreciate the comments from a couple board members about a desire to have a monitoring plan. And we have kind of a monitoring plan, but I think that we can be more robust and intentional about how we're structuring our accountability, holding the district accountable using data, and when the board is going to see data, what form it's going to take, when it will be available, and laying all that out. And that needs to be part of this process. I'll pause there again.
Tina?
Yeah, I don't want to have to repeat what everybody's been saying. I just wanted to make a point that our teachers and staff and admin are the eyes and the ears and the feet on the ground. And their feedback on how the current goals are being implemented, how they feel about it, what are they seeing that we could do better as we go through this process to develop maybe new goals or redefine, something that we've already been doing. Is there something we're missing because we aren't in the buildings, and our staff are? So just a little bit of feedback would be great. I would love to hear that as we walk through this process to navigate what's important. It's not just us making goals and then telling people what to do. It's a group effort on everybody's behalf. So that's all I gotta say.
Thanks. Yes, Lou, go ahead.
Did you go already yet though, Sarah? I want to make sure.
Pardon?
Did you get to talk already though? I want to make sure.
I said one thing. I was just going to ask Ryan a question. So go ahead and then I'll ask Ryan a question.
Okay. I'm still like kind of, I know that there's the strategies, so it's more than just the goals, but I feel like we're trying to put like, I'm trying to like figure out even how to say this. I think we're having a hard time letting some of the goals maybe go or modify like as a whole, because we've had them for a while and we're working towards them and we see progress, but I don't feel like some of them are necessarily need to necessarily be goals anymore. Like I said before, like which ones are the priorities? And I understand using data to show it, but there's just like, we just know that some of this is happening. Like we know that, we know about the bond project and the facilities and like all of like, we don't need data on that because it's already happening for the long range facility planning, and the infrastructure and engaging community and stuff. So there's some things where I feel like we're making it overly complicated to modify the goal set. And I don't think we need to get stuck in a structural loop. And I feel like that's what we're kind of doing a little bit. And I'm okay with whatever we decide to do to evaluate the goals and stuff, but I just wanted to point that out, that we don't have to make it more complicated than it needs to be. There's some things clearly like we really need to grab some data on and continue to watch, like goal 1, right? And I know we've made a lot of progress with that, but like we would need those numbers to be able to say, are we there yet? So, but there's some things that like clearly the schools are in progress. And so there's those kind of things. And long-term facility planning is part of any kind of long-term strategic planning anyways. It should always be in there. And that's why we have positions that support that kind of work with the district. And so that's kind of where I'm at with it. Like, I know it's not just the goals, it's the goals, sorry. It's not just the goals. It's also the strategies behind them that we look at. So my comments were made the first time with that understanding too. And I still stand by that. I feel like we're in a loop with the goals a little bit, because I remember this conversation last year. We were just like, let's modify some of the fine-tuned language, but we didn't really talk like we are right now about like, do we need to shift away from some of the goals? Anyways, I feel like I'm talking a lot now, so.
And now I think, what I'm hearing is like, we just, working on the wording of the goals isn't what we need to do right now, that these goals are now have been in place long enough. We need to specifically look at the goals and see if those goals are, if still, the top 5 goals we have for the school district. And for some of that, we need to have some data and some check-in. And I know like goal number 4 is one we've always looked at and said, your strategies under this are just sort of support enhanced programs that promote wellness. And there's not a lot of meat there. So having an ability to sort of focus on those a little bit more based on what we've done in the district might be helpful. The question I was going to ask Ryan was, I think we're sort of struggling with these goals because we don't know where we are. And I think a lot of that's the product of the last 18 months where our focus has just been on, not specifically on these goals. It's been on keeping schools functioning.
And then just some of the assessment data and
That
progress
just
on
didn't
it that
happen.
we have over time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those things are different than they have been.
Right. And so I'm just wondering if rather than spending the time, just sort of working on wording of goals that we're not sure, that are necessary goals anymore, or that the strategies we have are the ones we need to be working on anymore. Could we sort of figure out a process where we sort of get a report on where we are on each goal? And some of them we may, like the academic achievement, we might not be able to do right now because of the last 18 months. But to sort of work through so that we can say, yes, we've met this goal, or yes, we've met these strategies under this goal, but we still think it's an important goal and we need just to shift, keep what we're doing, but shift the strategies. Does that sort of make?
So I'm thinking about how to like structurally organize that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I wonder about is that I would want to also make sure that we have enough flexibility in there that if we wanted to change things. I also hear what Lou's saying is, like, I feel like I know we're making good progress in this one because of what I know, what I see, what we talk about. And so I also don't want us to get so tight to the little bit of data that we do have, that becomes the driver of, this needs to stay a goal or this doesn't need to stay a goal. So I just would want people to sort of suspend that a little bit in their thinking as we talk through that. So, but I do agree that it will take time. It will take intentional time set aside for this work. And so it's something that we're going to need to sort of assign time to moving forward based on the feedback.
Yeah, I mean, it almost sounds like next year's board retreat. Because that's what it really took to start forming these goals.
Yeah, and in the meantime, one of the things that I also heard was about getting feedback and input. And I think there's ways that we could do some of that sort of front loading to get some information. So when we come together, we already have information to move from or talk about because we've had input that helps to support some of the ideas and concepts. So that's something that could happen prior to a retreat.
Vince, you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say that any goal setting process is going to start being oriented by an examination of the data, and that process should be scaffolded with staff around and advising the board, and providing that information, that gritty information that we don't normally get. And so that's really the starting point. We need to be grounded on and have some situational awareness before we even really stop and go, okay, what's our vision for education in our community? And then what's the mission of the district? What are the values that we hold most dear? Because I mean, this board has changed. The values that are articulated in our guiding documents, they may not ring completely true for this board. And so we should take a look at that and then talk about, what are the goals? And we would have staff walking with us throughout that process optimally. And then, once those goals are established, then the superintendent is able to go back and start working on the strategic plan, looking at what are those strategies, what are those key strategies and actions that are going to operationalize those goals, and then come back to the board and we can talk about those strategies and go through that wonderful negotiating process that Sammy was talking about with Judy Ball. Yeah. So yeah, and I have graphics and stuff up in front of me that I can share if folks would like to see a diagram of what the whole strategic structure looks like. I'm happy to share that, but I'll pause there.
Shauna?
I was just going to add, as folks are referring to really making sure that the values that are coming out through the goals, whether they're the current goals modified in some way or new goals that are adopted or some blend of that, most likely, that we also recognize as part of that community student voice, as well as families. And families have really been playing such an integral role in their children's education always, but especially in these last 18 months and what we've seen. So just wanting to make a nod that towards students and families as part of that community as well.
Sammy.
So just want to second Shauna's thoughts, and probably Sarah Lou and Ryan and I could connect if the board is agreeable to thread the community engagement dimension with the strategic goals, development and refinement and assessment. And maybe we could utilize one or more of the sessions for our professional development. Probably we can check in with each other and with the OSBA and see if that's doable and applicable. But if everybody agrees that's something to pursue, maybe we can check in and see if that's a possibility, because from Shauna's comments, I believe that's really true. It's we want to develop board goals, but there are students' goals, there are community goals. In elections and check-ins and community engagements, we have to communicate those goals and be held accountable to these goals. So really, community engagement seems very applicable to this, I believe. So that's my first comment. Now I'm going to go to a micro comment and just jump into goal 6 and say we want to retain it, but let's open up the strategies. I would like to ask staff maybe to develop, to refine or review the strategies under goal 6. Think just like how ODE changed from Ready RSSL to resiliency framework. Let's check into these strategies. How can we build them into more resiliency mindset, and not only response, but response recovery and reimagining education mindset, and if that will change the development of those strategies or which ones are there. Maybe I think that would be a priority of mine to look at in the following meeting or the following time we look into the board goals.
Yeah. Lou?
Okay, I'll keep it short, I promise. I just wanted to second or third what Shauna said about the community involvement. I think it does fit in with our work that we want to do this year too, because we've heard community members ask, like, how are you even meeting these goals? Like, how is it? So do they make sense to the community for legibility as well? And so I think those are all important things. Like, what do our goals mean to the community as well? Not just like how we're measuring them. And I also like what you said, Sammy, about like thinking about the forward thinking with the goal 6. I think that the strategy number 5 under there kind of gets to that, but like, how do we amp that up, right? And so that's great. And I do want to say again, though, like, I'm supportive of whatever our collective decides, but I do think it's really healthy to think about implementing new goals too at some point, whether that's this year or next year or in the future, because you can't grow if you don't change your goals. Like that's pretty standard about goal setting. There has to be an endpoint for a goal. It can't be like a forever thing, or that you're not growing in that area if it stays forever. And so I think making sure that we're moving towards those goals and have the time frames. I almost feel like I'm doing SMART goals right now, but that's what I kind of feel like. Are they measurable? Are they attainable? What's the timeline? You know what I mean? Are they strategic? So I know they are, but it's not really clear on the doc what those are. And I'm not saying we should use SMART goals document using that, but I'm just saying, like, I think we need some of that kind of language in our goals too.
So I think this is just based on what we're sort of talking about. I think going through each goal at this point is not a valuable use of our time tonight. I agree that looking at because goal 6 was the goal for 2021, revising that so it's the response to COVID-19 goal for 21-22, as we're in school in a pandemic this year. I think figuring out how to do that might be a valuable thing. I don't know if that's something Ryan wants to work on and then bring back to us.
Yeah, I think yeah, it feels like there's two pieces. One is that goal 6
Yeah.
for ongoing, and 2 is the overall plan.
consideration.
And so so maybe that's what we come back with, is we come back with no revision to goals 1 through 5, but a modification to goal 6 for this team to review, or this board to review. And then talking about a longer timeline for revising our overall goals.
Yeah, I was gonna say for the sort of bigger picture revision, sort of strategically looking at our goals and whether they need to remain our goals and what other goals we might want to take on. I wonder if Sammy mentioned having a conversation with me and Sammy and Lou and Ryan to sort of come up with a strategy. So does that sort of sound like a reasonable next step for that piece? Does that are people kind of happy with that?
Sounds good.
So to recap, you have the staff look at goal 6 and come up with the 21-22 version, and then have the leadership team come up with a sort of a plan for, rather than just wording on goals, but really doing a deeper dive into whether the goals need to be the goals still, and the strategies need to be revised under them. So are we all happy with that approach?
Yeah, one thing before we shift is just appreciation. It could have been one of those things that was easily, just kind of signed off on. Yeah, we're going to continue to work on these things, and that's not where we went. And I appreciate that. So I think it's just sort of indicative of who this group of people are, and also how important it is, and how really this document is something that when we talk about our work, it's something that I think about and talk about almost daily in some way, whether or not it's a strategy within it, or if it's a resource allocation to it, or a conversation about how to enhance it. It is something that's really drives my work. So I look forward to having that conversation.
Yeah, I think having seen the response of the district to the goals we set them originally, I feel like this is a document that deserves like real work on it, rather than just a cursory, yeah, these are good.
Yeah.
So so we will, this is to be continued then. And the next item on the agenda, we're ready to move on, is consolidated action. As a reminder, the items in this portion of the agenda are for action. We'll be voting on them tonight. Does anyone have any questions about anything in consolidated action? Sammy.
So I would like to pull out the for brief question and discussion, the nomination for the LPC, and also the approval of real property transaction with the city of Corvallis.
Okay, Lou? Did you,
Sammy already said it.
Okay. So we can start with the nomination.
All right, with the nomination, I would like to speak to it, if that's okay. Sarah has been phenomenal in her leadership in the region, advocating for our children here in Corvallis and across the LBLL region. So I'm enthusiastically supportive of nominating her to continue on the LPC. And I encourage community members, the staff who live in another district, and my colleagues to reach out to board members in other regions, in other districts in the region, both ESDs and school boards, and tell them Sarah rocks, and let's make sure we continue to support her. So with gratitude, thanks Sarah for the work, and looking forward to supporting you to continue on the LPC.
Thank you very much. Anything else on that one? So real property transaction. Where questions on that? Sammy or Lou, you were the ones with hands up.
All right, I'll go first. I think what I want to do at this point first is I read the packet and the resolution, and I feel one of the most important things when we talk with community members is to highlight the partnerships and the interjurisdiction and interagency partnerships that governmental agencies do on behalf of the taxpayer, and how we're doing things to help the community. So I would like to ask staff to really highlight what is this transaction and how it is best for the community in terms of both the recreational resources, the district resources, and also the fire resources. So if we could speak to why this is a good transaction and how the community is benefiting from it, I think that's a good opportunity to elevate that to the meeting.
So I'm not sure if Olivia is there or not to be able to add to that, but in essence, one of the things that it does is it highlights the services provided by the fire department and the need there around capacity. It also highlights the work to make those tennis courts more better spaces, to be more usable spaces. One of the other pieces about that is, you know, for a long time, there was a use at Lincoln for the tennis courts there, where they had the structure built to play the bike hockey. And so now that's been moved to one of those two spots at the Lions Colony tennis courts as well. So again, between Parks and Rec, between the fire department, between the school district, continuing to work together to make sure that those spaces are accessible and available to our community, and our communities safe and healthy. So that's really what this would be about.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
I was curious, it's an interest, like looking at the map, is it just that little square of that whole area that they need? And is that the only square that is owned by the district? That it's just kind of fascinating, just looking like from a planning perspective, that it's just like a little, like, how is it just a little rectangle that is the district's property? That's like just a technical question. And the other one is how it was decided on that the exchange would be the tennis court renovations. I understand the benefits of it. I was just more curious about like the thought process behind that being the thing the city would help with for the district.
So we've been having lots of conversations about tennis courts over the last 2 years, frankly, just about the tennis courts that were at Lincoln, but were put there by the city and their movement. And so there's new courts that have been put in South Corvallis, but there's been conversations about lighting that would go with that. So I mean, it's like all these iterative conversations, and they have been around really around accessibility with tennis courts, and you see a lot of that happening in the city. At Cloverland, those are being updated too. So so there's that piece of it that's sort of led down this road for conversation. And then yeah, it is just this little area in red that the city would need, and that is on the LP site.
Okay, so there is the thought that is more of that area in green, the districts, or like I'm thinking ahead for the future, like there could be potentially, like if they need to expand, that's an option in the future for another partnership.
That would be a different partnership, but yeah, that beyond that, that's district property.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for highlighting that connection to all the different pieces that went together, because I think that's good for folk to know too, like it's part of a larger conversation. It's not just about one tennis court and one little square. It's like connected to all these other pieces of the continued construction and improvements for the community.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that is, you know, when we're writing up reports, we're trying to like hone in on just those key topics. But there is so much that happens in anticipation and in preparation. So yeah, so thanks for the question.
Any other discussion? Can I entertain a motion? Sammy,
I move to approve consolidated action as presented.
I hear a second.
Second.
So it's been moved by Sammy and seconded by Tina. The motion is to approve the items in consolidated action. Director Adams, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Director Tomini,
Aye.
Director White Bear,
Aye.
Chair Alagrava,
Aye.
Director Baker,
Aye.
and Director Jones.
Aye.
And I vote aye, passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is consolidated information. As a reminder, these items are in this portion of the agenda are for discussion only. Would anybody like to discuss an item in the consolidated information? Sam,
The nurses report.
anything else? Please, Sammy? Your question for the nurses report?
Yeah, I want to start with appreciation, really deep appreciation for the work happening. Thank you for the nurses. Thank you for the contractor nurses, for staff, for doing the work. I'm really grateful for everything they've been doing. I've consulted with several nurses in the community as well, shared their reports with them. And one of the common highlights from every single one of them is saying, kudos on the work and kudos on the EHR, the electronic health record. There are actually some departments in some hospitals and clinics that don't have an EHR. They're not utilizing the EHR. So they really appreciate it's happening and acknowledge the value of investing in it. So thank you for being strategic and doing the work to help our students. With that, I have a few questions. Number one, several questions. Let me start with the first one. How are we adaptive in terms of if we have acuity or complexity of cases with students? How are we adaptive in increasing the staffing so our nurses are supported and our students get the support they need? And is there a financial mechanism behind that, that we get more support from the state, just like other things? If there's more demand, you get more money. Is that happening? And if there's more, how can we advocate if there's not? So that's my first question. Shall I go one question by one or just, okay, that's my first question.
I think in order for us to be flexible when we have students who have one-to-one need, that's where we reach out to contract nursing companies so that we can bring someone in temporarily. This year, we have 6 nurses with an FTE of 5.2. So we have 2 nurses who are part-time. And those nurses are funded through general fund, but also our SIA. So that was where a lot of that support came from. So yes, there was some money that was directed there from the state through those SIA funds. But as you could read through the report, there's obviously a need. And also just in the market currently, we're struggling to find contract nurses who, because nurses are in high demand right now and they can kind of set their own wage.
Thank you. I just realized that. How about we'll go round robin. So I'll keep my next questions until. How do you feel about that? Or Charlie, just go ahead.
Yeah, let's do round robin. Vince, go ahead.
Really, I just wanted to express immense appreciation for the rich report and for the hard work that has been happening and the system transformation that has been occurring over the last couple of years. So just really appreciative. And I think this is an area where we were just talking a few minutes ago about our strategic plan and our goals. I think this is an area where this board needs to ask, how can we better support and ensure that we have nursing staff that can meet the needs of our kiddos? And we need to have our nursing staff in that process as we look at that. I forget, it's goal 4, whichever one is about health. So we need our nursing staff with us. So thank you.
Lou?
Like it's been shared, it's just amazing to see how much is done by just a few nurses. It's just, wow, when I read the report. And I do have, it's not necessarily a question, it's just seeing the ratio of the nurse to student ratio that's a huge expectation. And I'm kind of wondering more around what support is in place for the nurses themselves to help with burnout and make sure they feel as supported as possible in those kind of support that's in place for them from the district.
So the first thing Sammy already mentioned, and that's the electronic health record. The nursing department is just so excited to get that off the ground later this fall and into the winter, because that's going to relieve a lot of the pressure that they have for the work that they're doing. It's going to make it more standardized. It's going to allow for a free flow of communication between themselves and the parents and doctors. They have an administrative assistant that does all of their scheduling, that takes on a lot of the load of like doing health screenings and those kinds of things. She is super, a huge part of what it is that they're doing, and we just increased her hours because she really is such an integral part of all the work that's happening in the department. They rely and lean on each other, and we also delegate some of the care that our students need to educational assistants who are in the district. So a lot of that has to do, especially with our students, for example, who are students with diabetes and who need monitoring, blood sugar monitoring. Those are things that can be delegated to someone who's not a nurse. So our nurses work really hard in these first few weeks of school to delegate that to someone who they feel is competent at that work. And then they can let that go and just keep monitoring it while they, work on other more high acuity issues that are happening in the district.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was thinking too about like the stress level support. And so like those help lower the stress, but if there's other things too that, because it's a very demanding field, nursing, especially during a pandemic that nobody's ever experienced and all, but I just have a lot of empathy for the mental toll that is taken on any kind of health providers during this time and the strain and stress level. And so I'm glad to hear that the district has some things in place in addition to the electronic system too.
Thank you. Sammy?
Thank you. Lou asked one of my questions, and I have another one. Are we doing what I would call inter-specialist coordination, or let's say rather than yes or no, how are we doing inter-specialist coordination between nursing, mental health staff, and even family coordinator and health navigators? Could you speak a little bit to it about the coordination and really making sure that they're referring to each other and learning from each other about a student's case?
It's exciting work that's starting this year with when we're folding in now our family and student advocates. But mental health, as that clinic came on board, then nurses realized we can be doing that same kind of billing. We're working with some of the same students. Our special ed department and nurses are realizing how interconnected they are too. So we're making those connections, and we're seeing kind of a distributed leadership around that. So I'm responsible for the nurses, but Joe Wytham's responsible for the mental health clinic. But Joe and I work together on this electronic health record is one example. Mental health is using it for 2 years now, and then we came together as a full team and looked at a record, our electronic health record program that will work for both the clinic and for our nurses, and then came to those decisions. So we're finding more and more ways for us to come together in order to support kids.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, with that, I think the last thing I want to say is I'm looking at the ratio, and if I understand it well, that we're not yet at the state desired or statute request of 1 to 750, but we might get there with the 5.2 FTE. Is that right, or still we're going to be short?
We might get there, we'll see, yeah.
Yeah.
And then take
Awesome.
into account conferences and things too, so, yeah.
So the other thing,
Yeah.
so the thing I would add is that we have increased nursing over the last couple of years. So again, it goes back to the conversation we just had about our board goals. And so around that health and wellness conversation, if you remember several years ago with Ed Junkins on the board and that advocacy around health and wellness. And so based on that, that's where, as we made decisions, recognizing the need to increase and also recognizing that there's the support around that goal, focus on health and wellness, but that's what's really given us sort of the assurance to move forward with that. So again, that integration of those conversations and how they play out day to day, I just wanted to highlight that because that is when you asked about the stressors, I would say that having the small team that we had just a couple of years ago, those stressors would be even more pronounced. And so while again, not trying to discount what's going on now and the challenges we still face, we've moved along. And again, it's because of those conversations that's happened with the board that lead to an investment, which leads to better outcomes.
Yeah, thank you. And that's really important to highlight the strategic steps and steady steps as we build the system. And we're doing really better than other districts. And I'll share with the board our reports about school nursing from for the Oregon, for the states, and they compare different districts. We're doing really well. And also, given that we do have mental health specialists, just imagine if we don't have them and the nurses have to deal with both. It's just not about the ratio. It's about really the whole system. So I really feel that we're headed toward the right direction. And let us know how we can advocate for more funding and how can we make a statement of we need more money and here's how the money will help our students. The other thing I would like to see probably in the future is relating the social determinants of health as a criteria or as a way for us to measure the whole spectrum of students' growth in terms of their mental and physical health, and how we're addressing the social determinants of health in the classroom and in the school and with the family, and how that's actually helping us cut costs down the line when there is an anticipated physical or mental health that could have happened, but now it's being mitigated by other things. I think that's very important to highlight, that we're saving money by investing upstream with things that really mitigate worse problems down the line. So if we can highlight those, that would be really good. And it will help us actually advocate for more investments, because for the legislator or whoever is donating, they will see that we're really good stewards of their money. With that request, I want to say just thank you for all the work, and thanks for our nurses.
Any other comments on consolidated information? Seeing none, let's move on to board member comments. Tina.
I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge every key player in getting the school year started. Ryan, Melissa, all our admin staff, teachers, our food and nutrition folks, our folks who are in charge of construction, making sure our buildings are ready and beautiful and set so our children can go in there. And it's just astounding on the effort from everybody. I also want to recognize how big of a role community has played in this. The Corvallis Public School Foundation making things possible for us. I know I'm forgetting people, all the families who are preparing their kids to go back to school, their mask wearing, knowing that that's important. So I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge all the hard work that has been in making the school year off to a great start. I've heard so many families who are just so excited and listening to the kids just squeal with excitement to be able to be with their peers and see their teachers. And I've even heard from a couple of teenagers who are like, learning is hard for me, but I am so excited to go and crack open a book and listen to my teacher for hours a day. So I just want to take that moment to acknowledge the hard work of everybody. Thank you.
Vince, and then Shauna.
I'm just going to echo what my previous colleague just said. I'm feeling a lot of gratitude in this moment for all the hard work of getting us to this point. But I want to share a moment that I had on Wednesday when I took my youngest daughter to Lincoln Elementary School to go to school in a brand new building. And as we stopped in front of the building and I snapped a picture of my kiddo, like we all do, because we all take those pictures of our children on the first day of school, I was struck by the power of the moment that this was the culmination of 5 years of work. When I teach school boards, one of the things I tell them is that, doing school board work it's kind of like gardening. You pull out all the grass and you till up the soil and you plant some seeds and you fertilize it and you water it, and hopefully you'll see some harvest at the end of the season. And I remember when this process started, when board members who aren't here now anymore were traveling to go see what other schools looked like. And we started talking about what we wanted education to look like, not 10 years from now, but 40, 60 years from now. And I'm just struck at that we now have an edifice that is an expression of our values and the hard work. And so I'm just immensely grateful for all the board members who have put time in, the staff members who have worked so hard bringing this together, literally the work of thousands of people to build these wonderful structures in our community that are going to make such a difference for our kiddos. So it's a big moment. And so I want you to reflect on the work that we're doing tonight, that we'll do this year, is going to bear fruit 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So we're always paying it forward. So thank you all for the hard work that you do. Thanks to everyone who participated in doing all the bond work. It's an exciting moment in Corvallis.
Shauna, and then Lou.
So like Tina and Vince going right before me, also being a parent in the district and seeing the excitement of my child and going back to school, being able to drop her off on the first day of school and having that excitement and relief myself, and then also going through the drop off and stepping back in the car and being hit with waves of anxiety and worry and concern and relief and excitement and all those many feelings. I just want to acknowledge that for other families who may be going through this too. And one, to just express my tremendous gratitude for everybody in the district, as well as community partners from staff, teachers, educators, leaders, classified staff as well, nurses, everyone who's been named and everyone who we haven't named also, as well as students and families, for making this such an amazing and successful start to the school year, and to a district and a community that's really prioritized the health and well-being of our students holistically, from working on getting vaccination rates up to prioritizing mental health and equity along with academic success and achievement. And also to just take a moment to acknowledge too that this was a really exciting week for a lot of families. It also may have been a very hard week for a lot of families, some who have gone back in person, some online, and I've heard from some families who didn't find a fit for themselves in either space. And so also in acknowledging that there are families navigating new territories who have been part of CSD in the past and maybe again in the future, maybe when they feel safe to do so, if they have children who have special healthcare needs and can't yet be vaccinated or other challenges. So just wanting to acknowledge our full community and continue to think about how we can support each other in all of this. So thank you, everybody.
Lou and then Sammy.
Yeah, it's similar, just like that excitement paired with the anxiety that you can just feel when you drop the kids off, I swear. And but also the patience I seen was so cool because, like, I don't know if there's any Lincoln families watching, but that line is really long for a drop off in the morning and in the pickup with the cars, and it's working. And I know that they try to help a little bit with that this morning and everything, but just the patience that I seen people have with each other, and just that collective, let's wear a mask even though we're outside, because we know we're protecting the kids that are in the building from the adults in their lives picking them up. And I just wanted to just do that plug and reminder to the community that, like, we're still in a pandemic, and our kids under 12 are still vulnerable, as well as our friends and family that have underlying conditions or other health needs are still in a very vulnerable space right now, especially with the variant. And thankful that we have a high vaccination rate, and there seems to be some strong mask wearing going on near the schools and everything like that. But we all do our part to help keep the kids in school, which helps them learn. It helps parents be able to focus on work and all the other things that are associated with it. And just wanted to encourage the community to be excited, and also remember that we're not over. It's not over yet. And we're going to be living with this for a long time. And we got to continue to adapt and meet the needs that need to be met to keep kids in school. So that was my really long-winded thanks for doing your part, community, to keep the kids in school. And the other part too, I just wanted to take just a brief moment to reflect back on the new names of the 3 elementary schools and just sit in that moment. Like, this is a historic moment for our community, and I just can't get over how amazing it is. And I know people have been like sending me messages, and it's really hard to not want to be like respond and stuff like that. But I'm sure everybody is getting some too. And I just know the community is excited, and just thinking back of there may not have been widespread excitement at first, but this whole process over the past year plus has shown what really intentional community engagement looks like, and how strong of an outcome we are at because of that strong commitment to the community engagement. And I'm really proud of the work that the community has done with this, as well as my colleagues on the board and the staff. And I'm excited for what's ahead as well with the next phase. So I hope we all appreciate that historic moment and look forward to more.
Sammy and then Therese.
I just want to echo everything has been said from the comments. As the only person on the board without children, I want to tell you how joyful I am to see my timeline full of parents taking pictures of their teens and kids, or complaining about their teens they're refusing to be for a picture to be taken of them, and really celebrating this amazing moments. And it's really great to see that. It brings me joy. It reminds me these 2 days, the graduation day and first day of school, are just bring me joy and makes me feel this is why we do this work. And on that note, being not a parent and not having an anxiety this week, so happy first week of school for everybody. But on some break, I traveled safely to Europe to visit a friend, and I noticed something very noteworthy. I saw 0 cloth masks, and people are using PPF 2 or KN95. And I wonder if that kind of mandate is something that's worth of consideration, if it's something that could increase even our resilience and safety. So that's something to be explored if it makes sense. The other thing that I want to acknowledge is I'm with family. My dad and brother lend me jackets and the tie. So I want to acknowledge my dad and Daddy, my younger brother, who gave me the tie. The suit that is much shorter for him right now. He's much taller. But also, I want to acknowledge Sarah. Thanks for your leadership, for taking care of the emails, and for their chairing this meeting. It's went really smoothly and efficiently and effectively. So thank you for doing the work and for leading this meeting. It's been really great to be on the other side. And with that, thanks all, and looking forward to see you in a couple of weeks.
Therese.
Yeah, so a couple things. I got to see the classrooms as I was dropping my son off yesterday, and I wanted to specifically give a shout out to all the facilities people who spent so many hours getting that furniture assembled. It's some beautiful furniture. It's also furniture that really captures that we have diverse learners who really need the space to be able to be different things at different times. I'm just really grateful that our district was willing to make that investment financially, which is really an investment in the learning opportunities for our students. So I'm really grateful for that. I also wanted to thank all the people that came out and were keeping their distance and wearing their masks and hugging their kids at the sidewalk so there would be plenty of space for the kids to get inside safely and be able to still spread out. And for the excellent report of outside lunch going well. And I don't think the school district is necessarily responsible, but my child ate lunch, which I was not sure would happen if he was outside, but he did. So yay, maybe some positive peer pressure there. But overall, I feel like some of the things that we have implemented as a district we are seeing are working. We do continue to hear from community members various opinions and concerns and reflections about how we should be moving forward. And I want to first thank the people that continue to reach out and share with us, even those opinions or feelings that are divergent from the practices that we have implemented. It's really important to keep those ideas and those questions out in front of us. And I appreciate the willingness for folks to do that. I just want to remind all of us that there is not one approach to this that is going to meet everybody's comfort zone all of the time. We are all making sacrifices. We are all doing things differently than the way that we would prefer in order to make the most inclusive, comprehensively available learning spaces as we can. And that includes masks, that includes distancing, that includes the health checks that we are asking families to submit to before kids come in. And there have even been some concerns about is that experience going to be upsetting to kids? And my thought is that it isn't going to be more upsetting to them to answer how they're feeling than it is to not be able to be with their classmates, or even more so to have to experience the severe illness or the loss of a teacher because we didn't take the time to ask those questions. I think this is a learning opportunity for us to teach our kids that there are a lot of things that we do because it's better for everyone, even if in the moment it doesn't necessarily feel better for us. These things do not compromise the well-being of our children, asking them to participate in maintaining collective health. We're not putting them at risk to do that. We are teaching them that collective health is important and that everyone fares better when everyone has the opportunity to be healthy. So I'm really thankful for those measures and that by and large, they are being well received. And I want to encourage the parents who are still struggling with just all that it is going to require to keep us in the school year, that the district leadership, I'm very confident, would not be implementing these if they did not think it was the best way for us to keep our kids in school. And I am hands down convinced that our children's teachers are better equipped to teach them fractions than we are. And so we want this outcome, right? This is a good thing. So just thanks to everyone. Let's keep bringing up our concerns, but let's keep working together to find a way to get through them to the other side, because boy, was it ever just a beautiful sight seeing all those kids go to Garfield and not one child having to cross in front of vehicles to get inside their building. So yay for intelligent design as well. But thanks everyone. And this is a good start to what's going to be, I think, a great year.
And thanks to all of you. Since I'm in the chair tonight, I get the last word. Yeah, I thank you, Therese, for recognizing the facilities people. I was thinking of them as I had gone on a tour of Linus Pauling with my daughter before school started, and she was asking about the tape on the floor and the direction flow. And I thought the facilities people were assembling furniture and spacing desks and managing traffic flow and thinking about airflow and circulation in classrooms. And so they are behind the scenes, in addition to managing all the construction, really setting up our schools to open as safely as possible. I really think of Vince talked about our work as a garden. I have degrees in viticulture and pomology, so I like to think about our work as orchards and vineyards, where we have perennial fruit crops, where the management we do now is going to affect that crop for the long term and the productivity and the benefit we get out of it. So it feels good tonight to feel like we are making some management decisions with the naming of our schools that will bear quality fruit in the future. So I really appreciate our community involvement in this process. I appreciate the comments we've received. I especially appreciate the renaming task force and Director Whitebear for her involvement on that. The excitement and the education. I learned more about Betsy Coleman than I knew about her before, and I learned about two people who I didn't know about before who were part of the community where I live, and it's been fabulous. I think in the last 18 months, we have come to appreciate the essential role of our schools in our community, not just to the families who have children in the schools or who work in our schools, but our community as a whole and how our community functions and whether people are able to go to work and whether things that we enjoy participating in and you're going to, like school performances, are happening. And I really hope that as we move forward in this, we sort of hold on to that understanding of how essential our schools are to all of us in this community. And the involvement of the foundation and the people who've helped support our families has been critical. And I just, it's been sort of one of the good things that has come out of this pandemic, is seeing this understanding of the real essential role schools play, and the support in this community to do the things that we've been able to do, and open schools again with some anxiety, yes, but as someone who sent an unvaccinated 11-year-old to middle school this year, I was able to look at the risk benefit balance that parents have been doing for the last 18 months and say, it is way more important for her to be in school than at home. And so I am willing to look at the school district and see that we are doing pretty much everything we can to make sure that she is able to attend school as safely as possible. And I sent a very nervous 6th grader to school this week, and she has come home happy 2 days. So that's a win for all of us. So it just, I feel like we've done important work in this meeting tonight, and our district has done really important work over the last 18 months. And it feels good to be in a place where we have schools with new names and children in classrooms. Yeah. So thank you to everyone who's been part of that happening. And with that, seeing as we have no further business this evening, we are adjourned.
And the meeting for all.